Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. This is the Wilmette Park District regular meeting Board of Park Commissioners for Monday, April 12th, 2021. And it is now 7:35. Just a note for everybody listening, Comcast was unable to provide any employees to broadcast our meeting tonight on Channel 6. So we're recording the Zoom meeting and it'll be uploaded to YouTube channel probably tomorrow, I would guess. So that's a slight change from normal. Could we proceed with a call to order?
Sure. Roll call vote. Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Here.
Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Wolf?
Here.
Commissioner Goebel?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
All 7 members are present.
Wonderful. We have the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 8th, 2021. That was a regular meeting. Could I get a move and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, edits, changes?
No.
I had none. It was a very good job, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Roll call vote.
All right, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Well, item 3 in the agenda is communications and correspondence. We have that all coming from different directions at the moment. We had some in the packet, some came after the packet, some came late today. But I know we've got at least a couple letters that the board received yesterday and today urging us to slow the process at community playfields and incorporate a comprehensive planning process. We've had several letters in support of a 1-mile track at community playfields as opposed to another variation thereof. And then that's on top of what was in the packet. So there's been a lot going on. Anybody have anything that didn't make it to the packet or to Steve that he then included later on this afternoon?
Right before this meeting, I received an email, which I did forward to Steve regarding the more like the lakefront and crowds at the lakefront. We'll probably have that in for a future board meeting and lakefront committee meeting.
Sounds great. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none. We got a little bit of a different steps in the agenda this evening. We're going to have the discussion and the presentation on the community playfields bathroom location and the fitness path configuration, followed by kind of and part of that is the board asking questions and getting things out there. And then after that, letting the public weigh in with their thoughts on these topics or others, obviously. And then later on in the agenda, we will be actually having the Parks and Rec Committee formally present those items and be voting on them then. So at this point, if we could go to the presentation on community playfields, I'm sure it's of great interest to many people that are on.
Sure. I will walk us through the information. Also with us tonight to help answer questions are Superintendent Solberg, who has presented this information prior in Parks and Recreation Committee meetings, as well as Tom Richlick from DeWalt Hamilton, who are the engineers who we've been working with on the project in regard to location ideas and cost estimates. This information that I have here in front of you is the memo that was in the last Parks and Recreation Committee packet on the March 15th meeting, or March 16th maybe meeting. Nothing here is new or different. Just want to walk you through the information, even though I think most of the board were observing these meetings nonetheless. As you can see here, we have the visual of the various path options, with Brown being the northern primary loop at approximately a half mile, green being an additional quarter mile here on the north, yellow being an option that swings around through the northern part and then bisects the southern portion and runs along the playfields and then over by the junior high and reconnects up by the tennis courts. Blue being a similar concept, but instead of coming through the middle of the field, it swings over closer to High Crest and along the southern property line. Where you see red within the blue line is where Boardwalk has been contemplated as it's located closer to trees as compared to the yellow option, which is further away from the trees, not necessitating Boardwalk, but awfully close to some of our field locations. You also have a purple concept that is hard to see as there are a lot of lines that go over the top of one another. But the difference here is on the southern end, it rings the cottonwood trees and then returns back to the north up here. So all of these options have been looked at and discussed. All of the options have cost estimates associated with them in the memo. And ultimately, the committee is making the recommendation by a 2-to-1 vote of considering the 3/4 mile or half mile options here on the northern end and not looking at the 1 mile loop because of the conflicts with existing programming and field space. Then if we turn our attention to the various bathroom options that we have contemplated, you can see it's hard to read the letters in this, but you can see all the different colored options here. Within these options, the Parks and Rec Committee, again, by a 2-to-1 vote, is recommending this option here, which is option C in pink. It's centrally located. Again, all of those options have dollar amounts for basic utilities of getting the water there and the sewage out of the various locations. Option C, you can see here, is approximately $135,000 in that type of work. And then I wanted to provide new information. This has not gone to the committees, but after a recommendation was made to look at doing washrooms in location C, we wanted to get together some more information on what the overall costs would look like and even provide an image or two on what a bathroom could look like, but know that nothing has been officially designed. Anything can be altered, anything can be created, but the option that you're seeing in the pictures is actually reflected in the cost numbers that you're going to see here tonight. So starting on this first slide here, you can see your utility costs and your site improvement costs that reflect those numbers that were in the memo we just looked at. It's about, $2,000 different here than it is in that memo, but virtually the same number. Then when you start talking about the actual bathroom structure itself, what is contemplated currently is there's a lot of prefab options that you can buy and then install. That's what you see these first two line items showing is the cost of the actual structure at about $80,000, installation costs at about $120,000. We've added about a $15,000 cost to run network utilities to it that weren't in prior utility numbers to facilitate security cameras and things of that nature. Then you can see soft costs and contingencies, reaching a base bathroom total budget of about $482,000 between utility costs, structure, installation, and contingency and soft costs. This last slide here shows some options that could be added to the washrooms, alternates, including a picnic pavilion canopy that would cost approximately $110,000. The relocation of the pump equipment to within this structure would cost about $25,000. And then adding a drinking fountain that is a bottle filling station, regular drinking fountain, as well as a dog drinking bowl that would cost about $10,000. And then a bike tool fixing station for another $4,000 as people ride through the park, having that option. There's one right here in the metro station outside of Village Hall as well. You see them around town in various places. So that if all of those options were considered and added on to the base bathroom dollar amount, you're looking at approximately $631,000.
631, we off of what? The option C?
Correct.
Didn't we start with 135 at option C? And then,
At 135 was utilities and site improvement, not the actual bathroom.
okay, sorry.
That concludes the presentation. Happy to answer questions. Happy to have Superintendent Solberg or Tom Richlick answer questions for you as they're asked.
So if we were to move this to a different location other than the recommended C, the cost differences would be equal to the cost differences that are there today for the utilities and sort of that. So if it's $50,000 more, it's $50,000 for the total too.
Correct.
Okay,
Well,
all right.
Option, for instance, option B would be about $60,000 more. And we're talking about 633 has got all that stuff added in, right? Picnic shelters.
Correct. 482 as the baseline number, 631 once you add everything else in.
And sort of, Steve, this doesn't seem like a real difficult thing to do. Is the contingency based on what is being considered in developing contingency of that level?
I'll ask Tom to chime in on that, but generally that's just a practice when you're this early in a design process is to have contingency. But Tom, you can speak to the type of things that might consume that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Steve. The contingencies for the designs are absolutely necessary at a job when we're drawing things on an aerial photo. We've vetted these costs for where the utilities could go, where the site could happen, but we haven't gone through village permit, public process. We haven't gone through MWRD permit. So those are all the steps that the soft costs carry us through. But those are the contingency is a sort of respect to the variable nature of what might jump up at us, site conditions we didn't anticipate, or design elements that we want to add. I mean, those are just, it's a realistic contingency at this phase to have 20%. As we get further along, that contingency gets dwindled usually. Yes, sir.
Okay. And what we've gathered up already from the work that's been done on that property in terms of the soil and stuff, is that helpful, not helpful, not applicable?
Yeah, it hasn't raised any major red flags, which we could have even set aside as a known site condition. So 20% is sort of, I would say, industry standard in my book from until we've gone through a final engineering design, gone through a permit sequence with the village and county agencies. We've also going to bring in, the architect to design the structure, and what are we going to find out then? So yeah, we've answered a lot of questions by being out here for the last year, but there's always more.
All right. So would you, in your professional opinion, say this contingency is more than adequate, or just right, or maybe not adequate enough?
At this early, I think it's what we've found to be the best course of action to have 20% at this time.
You're a good politician.
Gordon, I'll jump in on contingencies if you like,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, once you're done.
No, you know a lot more than I do about this, Brian.
Well, maybe. Tom, what I'm understanding is this is a prefab unit, basically it's designed, right? And so cost.
The base structure is prefabricated, but you can see even in the example pictures, the facade, the siding, the roofing, there's a lot of things that we still can tinker with. So you get prefab designs, but that's just a baseline for our design.
You're pulling off a menu for the
yeah,
first,
exactly.
Right?
And as we go through the first phase of the design of this, I'm expecting us to vet through that prefab just by itself with a couple bells and whistles, and then what does it look like if we did these other three things, and vet through that early on in the scope of our design phase from the architect.
And so basically the prefab, so it's a prefab, it's like a 2-family room kind of bathroom, right? A 2-holer, as we might say in the industry.
That was the intention, yes.
And
Two-
where did
two-
you get those numbers in terms of usage? I mean, look, I think that's adequate. So
Yeah.
did you, like, we know how many people are out there and what that means? There's some numbers behind that.
Yeah, we discussed this, I think, was it at facilities committee, Steve?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have
Parks and Rec
this,
Committee.
thank you, sorry. Yeah, it's sort of a minimum for most park settings or institutional settings to have 2-stall structure. Simply just for the base fact that if you have one in service, you can have one being maintained. You can have one that needs work and you still have a restroom structure here. So it just doesn't make sense to do much in the way of public structures with a single unit. I'd say that this
Not
was,
arguing that, not arguing
Yeah.
for single use.
other than that, I think this is
I'm satisfied
constrained.
with 2. I'm
Yeah.
quite satisfied. I just want to know if you ran numbers, like it's not 3, it's not 4. We're not taking chances here. I don't think we are.
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
2, and that's safe, right?
Yeah,
Okay. So with regard to soils, this is on a spread footing, right?
yes.
Yeah, that's more than enough, right? We didn't run anything with, we weren't running into boulders with those tanks or anything. So the risks with regard to soil conditions, which can be kind of high risk, is not there. The risk with regard to scope and design, I see the only thing is to do is with the village, and I don't see big problems with the village. You're thinking this is conceptual design at this point. Absolutely.
That's correct.
Conceptual, and that's why the 20%.
Yes.
So Gordon, to your point, I mean, even if they get further along, I would recommend a 10% even after design.
Yes.
So, you could talk it down 5%, but it's at your own risk. Tom is simply saying that he would recommend a 20. I don't think it's a particularly high risk. So 5% of 600,000 is $30,000.
Yep.
So I think 20% is certainly conservative enough because this is a relatively low risk project. And for now, but if you, in the back of your mind, you want to take 30,000 off of that, go right ahead. And that's a 15% contingency.
All right. I've got another question, but I want to let somebody else have a chance to ask theirs if they've got any.
Go. I may come back. This is
Okay. All right. One of the things that the board is sensitive to is trying to soften the look of whatever structure we put up there so that it's landscaped and people have made it very clear that they would rather be able to see as much as they can out of their yards across the fields, and having a structure in the way is in their minds an eyesore. And even though I think the field of vision that it's in for most everybody is single degrees, but what do you kind of see in terms of are we going to landscape around, put something around so the sidewalks are sort of hidden by hedges, or can we put vines on the side of the building so it sort of looks more natural? Kind of what's sort of considered in the thinking in this?
I think, the numbers that you're looking at include landscaping to do just what you're talking about, but no details have been determined at this point.
Okay, so there's more than just grass, here or so.
Correct.
Okay, I thought I saw something. Maybe it was on the other project.
If
Here it says pavement and grass seed. That's why I was asking.
Well, you're going to have to restore some of the area that gets disturbed during construction, but there's a landscaping allowance. I think it's $8,000.
Yeah, plants are cheap, Gordon, so you can do
Okay,
it.
but that's going to be key, and those don't obviously mature right away. So sooner we get them in, the sooner they do what they're supposed to do.
You get a lot of plants for a little money.
Yep. Okay.
It would not have a huge impact on the overall cost if you wanted to complete.
Okay. No, but I want to make sure it's sort of in the thinking.
Commissioner Anderson, I believe Commissioner Wolf has a question.
Well, please let her in.
Actually, more of a comment on the fitness path. Are we still talking about that, or are we just talking about bathroom?
Anything and everything we just presented on. Obviously, we come back to all of this after public comment as well.
Great. I just wanted to point out, we, as we talked about the fitness path and different configurations, I've heard from several people about having the 1 mile path be more preferable than the half-mile path. Along with that, though, I'm not in favor of using any boardwalk. I had reached out to Executive Director Wilson regarding the distance of the path from the trees, because at the golf course, as you know, we were starting a project to put in a new golf cart path, and I believe the same contractor is doing that work. And the path was considerably closer to the trees there than it has been at community playfields. And so maybe we could ask Director Wilson to kind of point out what he learned in regards to that. So I believe everybody got an email about it, but just to make sure that everybody else is aware.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a potential to move it closer and add some trees in there to give some protection to the neighbors.
For sure. So in response to your question, I reached out to Tom from Gewalt Hamilton, and we discussed the differences of the two projects, the proximity of a path to trees between the golf course and community playfields. And you know, the first and foremost, there's no specific difference between the two projects as far as like anything that would be directed by code. It's kind of the same set of circumstances from that point of view. What really is the difference is the path at the golf course in many areas is replacing existing path. Yes, we're adding path, but the areas that are tightest and around trees tend to be near the tee boxes and the green complexes. And therefore the base has already been excavated and been there for years with those trees. So there's little to no risk of impacting the trees in those areas. There are areas though where new path is contemplated to go, that we are definitely routing closer to trees there than we are proposing at community playfields. The reason for that is the golf course over the last approximately 7 years, either through illness, through storm damage, through trees being removed during the renovation in 2013, or trees that just simply don't make sense in the place they're in, so they were removed. We've removed upwards of 100 to 150 trees. And the optics around that on the golf course is very different than the optics we've heard around tree removal at community playfield. Many people have spoken in favor of the trees. So when we talked about routing this path or these options of paths, we took an even more conservative approach because we don't want to risk the trees in any shape or form. We also don't think we're risking trees at the golf course. So the bottom line is there's possibly room to get closer to the trees. Yes, that increases the risk to the trees, but it doesn't necessarily, determine that they have to come out or that they will be damaged to the point where they would have to come out somewhere down the road. But that risk does go up, and we're trying to stay far away from that risk. And to your point, Commissioner Wolf, by staying away from the trees, it puts the path closer to the fields. And that's another consideration that was discussed at the Parks and Recreation Committee is that close proximity of runners with our soccer players coming off the fields chasing a ball, or parents and siblings and all the dogs on leashes watching family members play in proximity to the track or the path is a concern as well. So is there a way to create a better buffer between the fields and not impact the trees? Or if we impact the trees, replant trees? Possibly, but that's a discussion for the board to have.
So just to clarify, it could potentially, the path could potentially be there without the boardwalk and be fine for the trees. And again, with our comprehensive landscaping plan that's coming, other additional trees could be added if something happened to any of those trees.
Mostly, yes. I don't know if I'm willing to say we can do it without impacting trees, because like I said, it will increase the risk, but in concept, yes, I think that's a possibility that should be discussed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson, I see Commissioner Murdoch's hand is up.
Please.
I just wanted to sort of pick up on what Amy said. And again, I'd like to start by thanking Amy for asking that question. It's a great question. And obviously we are doing a lot of work over at the golf course, and we are working closer to root systems and canopies and whatnot. And I mean, I guess I've probably been the most vocal opponent to the 1 mile path recently, but I was the person who first suggested a 1 mile path. And I obviously see all of the benefits of 1 mile path. I've done a lot of running in my day, and I appreciate that as well. I guess I would remind everybody that in the material that was here for the board, it's actually referred to as a walking path, and we've called it a fitness path. We've called it a lot of different things. I think some of the comments we received from folks recently makes me think like some folks view this as sort of the North Shore Marathon training facility, and I don't want it to become that. But I do really see tremendous benefit in finding a 1 mile path if we can. So if we can move the path, closer to the perimeter of the property, and still have a high probability that we won't damage the trees, I would be very open to that. What's most critical to me is that we don't in any way, in the slightest way, impact the current field configuration, the current field rotation plan, and make sure that we have a buffer between the fields and the path. I've coached so many soccer teams here, and you do see kids kind of running off the edge of the field, going after a ball or whatever, and then sliding. And I'm really concerned for the safety of those kids. But if we can find a way to move the path closer to the perimeter and create that buffer and not impact the fields, I would strongly support a 1 mile path. I think the only question I would ask then, if we take a look at all these different colors and options, and I think Parks and Rec has spent, the better part of 8 months going through a myriad of different concepts because we all knew where we wanted to get and we didn't know how to get there. My question would be if it's possible looking at, because I think the 1 mile loop with the green and the yellow in the northwest corner, if it would be possible to eliminate that and kind of add the blue in the southwest and still get at a 1 mile path. So that would be a question I would have for staff. Thanks.
Didn't quite, what was the question with regard to changes to the path? Say that again. I want to look at the drawing.
What I had said was if we think that, the problematic area has always been the south/southwest area where we have that red section where there's a boardwalk. I think we all agreed that a boardwalk made no sense for a variety of reasons. But when we push the path far away from the trees and the root systems to sort of that yellow path, we ended up, significantly impacting the current field configuration, our field rotation system. And I've been very uncomfortable with that. I also am very uncomfortable with something that cuts across a permanent structure that cuts across fields in sort of the southeast corner of the yellow path. If we can somehow push the path closer to the red and blue away from the yellow to give us more space and not impact our current field configuration, more southwest than southeast, if you're looking at Steve, where you're showing that. But my question is, if we could, because I think the 1 mile path includes the northwest corner, the yellow and the green, could it instead include the blue at the southeast? That would be a more desirable 1 mile loop to me.
Sure. And Tom or Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the blue path over here that is 1 mile is basically the brown, it comes around here. It does not cut across here. And then it comes out this way and works its way back around. And it does not come out this way. So that's the 1 mile path in just the blue configuration.
And so the question then is, can we do that path without the boardwalk, keeping it away from the fields, while still, trying to protect the trees?
So pulling it somewhere, more north of the red-blue line, a little bit south of the yellow line, and what does that look like, and how does that work, and how does that impact trees?
And does it not impact the current field configuration or the field rotation?
Right.
Because that's
Yes.
the highest priority for me, probably given the current use of those fields.
Correct.
Hey, Steve, don't forget the water main is in there also
What water main?
for the irrigation, and then also the sewer lines run through there.
The sewer lines from the tank run out of there?
Correct.
Correct.
Where exactly, Christy?
Those are mostly underground, so aren't as direct conflicts, but wouldn't want to put the directly on a couple of the locations we would want to avoid. The other nice thing is some of the, like where the yellow line is drawn there, there's a east-west storm line that was part of the drain system for the vault, and that intercepted and kind of cut off the root systems at the fringe of those trees there. So that's a relatively safe spot from a tree impact area. That's why we drew the yellow line east-west right there by the boardwalk. Commissioner Mike Murdoch, sorry. We would
I could be Commissioner Mike. That works for
Commissioner
me.
Mike, I've got your name as Mike's iPad, so I'm just I know it's not Commissioner iPad. As we go through the design, you know, similar to the restroom, we're going to get some more detailed topography in some of the corners of the area for drainage, but I'm also going to pick up, you know, some more accurate locations of the trees, current sizes, and since we've done a lot of work in the last year with the forester, get an idea of where his protections want to be for each of these trees that we're going to be running around and putting path along, and then we'll set that boundary and then try to see how that affects proximity to the fields, the orientations of those, where can we squeeze all this together, and that is sort of the next step of our design when we get going into that.
So Tom, it sounds like it is possible then to kind of have a plan where we could keep the fields and have that path on the south side without putting the boardwalk in, potentially.
I mean, if we have a small stretch where it's close, the field orientations, you know, after the vault construction are getting adjusted. So as we figure that out, we might be able to fit all this together. But it's one of those things where instead of looking at this thing at 100 scale, I got to get down at a much more close-up view and really do some design. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm going to jump in. So I've got a couple things. One, I want to ask about the drainage, particularly on the north end where I've heard neighbors' concerns about how wet those fields are. I'll come back to that. The other thing is, to be honest, 3 members of this board, if we're going to vote on this tonight, we've got to vote on what we see. And I don't know how else to vote on it. So, I mean, we can talk about various ideas, but this is what's being brought to us, and I'm going to have a hard time voting on ideas. I'm going to tend to vote on what I see out here on the plans. Let me go back, and I'm not prepared to make any statement yet on what it is I prefer. We got some public comment, and I'm looking forward to that. What about the drainage issue that's been raised? Particularly in the baseball fields, that this is, you know, can these paths remain dry? Look, we play baseball. It's not like it's wet all the time. We don't have a swamp over there, but, you know, if it's soggy, what's that going to do? And Tom, do you have, I guess the question's to Tom or staff.
No, definitely Tom.
Actually, that's my favorite part of the job is all the drainage. So
Civil engineer.
Throughout the facilities committee planning part, we've cycled through a bunch of path surface options, and one of the, I believe, favorite options of the committee was an aggregate path. We're going to use, we would propose to use an open graded aggregate path similar to what you'd see as a warning track in college professional baseball, high school baseball. It's fast draining. We'll have an under drain underneath it. So that will alleviate water issues in the general location around the path itself. And then, as I indicated, we're going to have some new topography in the areas that are identified through these public meetings. I've had a couple of notes, a few that I've been to, but we've also gone out after rain events and looked for the isolated pockets of water. We're going to make sure we pick those up. There is storm sewer to connect to in addition to the vault at the south end. And so we just need to isolate those locations, get drains to them, or pitch them into the drains. So that's part of our design.
So a permeable kind of tight gravel path with French drain underneath it, or is it?
Yep.
Yeah. And then that connects into sewer. That connects into stormwater.
Storm sewer. Yes. Yeah. That
would stay relatively dry.
Yes.
I mean, not dry, but it would at least stable.
Stable and a lot drier. It would, especially the localized water that is standing in pockets in an outfield or along the perimeter edges of the campus. Where this path goes, the walking path will help draw water out. And then where there's serious drainage issues, we're gonna bring a storm sewer, put an inlet over there. Obviously away from playing fields, but we'll stick them out in the corner where they need to be.
Is there a residual benefit to the playing fields themselves by ringing this with this path that drains out?
Yes.
And that's built in your proposal's built in the drainage proposal, built into the estimates that we've seen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's in
Commissioner
the path.
Anderson,
That's what the drainage would be in the path numbers. So
Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Murdoch has his hand up again.
Please,
I just wanted to clarify, I've heard terms like gravel and aggregate thrown around this evening, but I thought that both at the board meeting and a past committee meeting, we talked more about cinder, and I thought that's what the runners preferred. Can you clarify that for me?
Tom, I believe our quotes in the past for costs for the path have included cinder.
Cinder is an old term, like it was really old term. Older than when I ran track, or maybe even when Steve Wilson ran track.
Oh, I ran on cinder.
Goes quite a ways back, but cinder is just aggregate screenings. So the current terminology for a cinder path is aggregate screenings, and it's just the fines that are generated when you're creating a road gravel. So you're going to take those fines. The warning track aggregate that I'm proposing that'll drain and absorb this water will feel the exact same to a runner as an old cinder path. It'll probably run better. It'll be easier for Christy to maintain, or Christy and the staff to maintain, and it'll help the drainage a lot better. It's the next technology. We've worked on this with baseball enthusiasts over the last 20 years, and I've been using this fairly solely for both paths, warning tracks, and anytime I'm running a path through an area that's got a water issue, I can solve both issues. So.
Put it on the knees.
Oh, it'll feel the same as an aggregate screenings, cinder. The terminology for cinder isn't used in the industry anymore, but the correlation to what we currently see is like aggregate screenings is what most forest preserve paths are made of, unless they're in a poorly drained area. And this is what you'd see in a poorly drained area, what I'm proposing. So.
Thanks
And
for
I-
clarifying.
I'm assuming it's similar like to the Green Bay Trail to get to Glencoe. The term that I've heard is crushed limestone. That's more, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner Anderson, based on the agenda, we have discussion and questions now for the engineering team, and then we have discussion at the board later. Would you like us to share perspectives on the path and the restrooms now or after public comment?
I think we might as well do them now, because I think the public will want to hear it.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I'm going to comment first about the path, because I think we've had, we'll probably have an opportunity to share thoughts on that and then move to the restroom as a discussion. So with respect to the path, my experience is that you don't typically notice a running path unless you're a runner. And the idea that we would have many, many people running all at the same time, and perhaps at the same time as Saturday morning soccer, when we might use all of those fields, and it's typically 8 to 12 on Saturdays when you would have the youngest children through, say, middle school. In the Saturday afternoons, we would have our rental teams, the club teams that use the fields. And so we're essentially talking about a single day when we have the most use, and then perhaps afternoons, weekdays when we would have soccer practices. So we're talking about some fairly finite sections of time. And then runners would choose, or walkers or passive users of the park would choose to use it really at any time. And so as I think about the overlap of traffic, I find that would probably be the exception rather than the rule. In particular, serious runners like running in the morning when it's really cool so I think the concerns we might have about crossing paths or traffic may be fairly limited. Additionally, looking at the graphic and understanding that there's a few layouts that can yet to be considered, there's ample room to do a mile track, and to do anything less just doesn't make sense. I've seen a number of different public comments, and it's everything from, it would be like building an 8-hole golf course instead of 9, which I think is an apt metaphor. But certainly we have enough space that we can take advantage of the full perimeter and have distance from fields and accomplish a mile track. So it seems like that is, you know, a really logical and fairly straightforward decision. I think we have a lot of united beliefs about permeable. So I think, in terms of the material used, I'll leave it to the engineers. I think that sounds like a right suggestion in terms of not only the drainage, but the comfort of the path for walkers or runners. But I think I've heard most commissioners on this meeting or others describe interest in a permeable surface that drains well. So those are my thoughts about the path. I'm in favor of a mile, and I'm in favor of something that will drain well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sure. I mean, to the extent that my thinking has evolved, I'll tell you where I am now. One thing is I'm waiting for public comment before I really make up my mind. Then I'm just going to talk about the path. It's certainly the community and particularly the neighbors have been involved in these improvements for some time. And in my way of thinking, particularly with regard to this path, the neighbors have been somewhat willing to negotiate on this. And I appreciate that. To the extent that we can find some consensus in these things, I'm all for that. I want to hear from them, so I don't want to speak for them. I will say that I have heard what I believe I hear from the neighbors is that a path, they're not dead set against a path, but its impact to the park is a concern of theirs. I can see myself, and let's just say the half mile track is where I'm starting, and then we'll go from there. To the runners, look, I ran 6 marathons. I blew my knee out. I don't run them anymore, but I certainly have trained 20-mile runs, 15-mile runs, and I understand. And when I go to our indoor track, it's 12 laps to the mile. It's death. Well, not literally, but it feels like every lap is a mile. It's frustrating to have to run around and around and around and around. On the other hand, to me, a half-mile track, it's math. It's math. So I remember when we were doing the lakefront, and we had a lot of people come in, and we were ruining the lakefront because we weren't going to go with the diagonal parking. We were going to go with perpendicular parking. And at some point, it's like, folks, come on, let's compromise here. I don't think perpendicular parking is going to ruin your lakefront experience. We're talking about adding a path, and I'm looking for some compromises here. A path is better than no path. That's the big step up. So I'm just saying, I want to hear from the neighbors. I want to hear from the community. I want to hear from the runners. I want to hear from everybody before I totally make up my mind. But that's sort of where I'm starting at with regard to the path. If you want to talk about bathrooms, I'll come back to that because we haven't really talked about the school yet. And I think we have to talk about that before we finish up discussions on the bathroom. So anyway, that's my feelings on the path.
All right, well, let's talk about the path and then come back to the bathrooms. That way we sort of stay on track.
Would agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anybody else want to weigh in on the bathrooms? I mean, I'm sorry, on the track.
On the track, yeah.
I thought we were still talking about the track here.
Yeah, no.
I guess for, saying here, I mean, the track will be used by the schools, intensely by the schools. I mean, they have run day, they're supposed to run a mile, they have cross country, they have track and field in the spring. I mean, there is no question that it will be, that it will be used by the schools on a fairly frequent basis. I think, like others have said, I mean, I think if we could do a mile, it would be absolutely great. But I don't want it to impact the fields or the where the field layouts, and I really don't want a boardwalk, which other people, others commissioners have said, we don't want the boardwalk. If it can be done, if a track can be set up in such a way that we don't have a boardwalk and we don't impact the fields, hey, that's wonderful, wonderful. I mean, no matter what, it would be nice to have the track with like markings on it when you have gone half mile, quarter mile, half mile, 3/4 miles. If it has to be, and it has to be half mile, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, it's a quarter mile track at New Trier. I've gone and run on that, and you just run around it 4 times. It's, schools don't usually more often have quarter mile tracks, and you just run around, for the equivalent distance. So I just say, if we can do it a mile, that would be great without, the boardwalk impacting the fields. Otherwise, I think, half mile will work too. So.
Anybody else on the track? And I'll step in if nobody else wants to. Go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to say, so Commissioner Murdoch said something earlier about an idea to perhaps compromise. Is that a realistic idea, a realistic plan as far as the southernmost part where the boardwalk was initially proposed?
I think it's a concept that seems like it has some feasibility to it, but as Tom said, currently we're flying at this height. We're going to have to get down a lot lower to prove or disprove whether it's really an option.
So I think I would like the mile. There's just a lot of benefits to it, but if it's not realistic, I'm not willing to spend ridiculous more amounts more money, and nor do I want a boardwalk.
Can I ask a question? If we didn't have the boardwalk in the blue layout, which is essentially the mile around the perimeter of the park, I'm assuming it would be considerably less cost for that on the cost estimate.
Yes, the cost would definitely come down.
Right.
I think the line item is what, 140,000 just for the boardwalk? So that would immediately bring it down.
Correct.
Yeah, and you'd have to replace it with something for the 600 feature. Going to make aggregate, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as Tom pointed out, this will help to put in drainage in the entire park. So that's where the drainage and everything will run under. So having it on the entire park would help pull water from all those areas, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think there's a benefit to doing it that way too, because we're helping the drainage in the entire park as well.
I like that.
Which helps the playability of all the fields for soccer, baseball, everything. So another point to consider.
Yeah, I'll weigh in unless Todd, you want to weigh in some more?
No.
Okay.
Keep going.
I guess I look at the costs for the 1 mile, and I recognize that a substantial portion of it, 144,000, has to do with the 600 feet of boardwalk. That if we were going to go to a mile, we would figure out some way not to do the boardwalk and assume it would just be 600 more feet of aggregate instead. So that would bring the cost down. But if you look at the costs that are in there now for the mile, and my recollection is like $475,000 or $480,000. And if you look at the half mile, it's in there for, I think it was $176,000 if I'm remembering right. So you're looking at 2.7 times as much cost to get twice the distance. And honestly, in my opinion, the extra 300,000, or if you can take out the boardwalk and replace it, maybe it's only an extra $175,000. But that's a lot of money for an incremental benefit of having a mile track versus a half a mile track. And if you go with half mile track, you don't run into any issues with the trees. You don't run into any issues with being close to the houses on the south side. You don't run into maintaining another half mile of track, year after year after year. And, if you go with the the half mile, you can always go to the mile later, the way this is out there, because, basically the half mile, other than the inside stretch that follows the center path, is the way the mile would go. So I think realistically, it's the extra half a mile is a nice to have. I think the first half a mile is a need to have. And, given the increasing cost for an incrementally smaller benefit, I personally don't think it's worth the extra money, especially when we're going to get to the bathroom later. The bathroom's pretty expensive. And, I'm a little concerned about loading up tons and tons of cost. I'd love to have a mile track. I get where everybody's coming from on it. Believe it or not, I used to run too in my high school days. It's nice to have. I can't justify it personally, but the half mile I'm all for. Anybody else want to weigh in before we? Okay, want to talk about bathrooms?
Can we talk about the IGA and the junior high? I think it's.
Yes, that's part of bathrooms. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that IGA really doesn't say anything. I mean,
So
it's a very
just for everybody's information, our attorney has written an initial draft of an IGA that has been shared with the members of the Board of Park Commissioners. That draft needs to obviously gather input from the board, from staff, and then a final draft needs to be created before it's passed to the school district for their board and their staff to add their criteria. So at this point, the IGA is truly a first draft that has a lot of work to be done on it before we know exactly what we're talking about and whether everybody is in agreement.
I think what have we sort of, just this is kind of a recap. What have we kind of agreed to in principle? We have agreed.
We've agreed to in principle with my conversations with the superintendent of District 39 is that access would be granted to the park district, and the park district would take on responsibility for all costs of the bathroom, whether it's updating it, maintaining it, cleaning it, providing security for it, even possibly putting a separate meter on it or coming up with some way to manage the utility expenses for it. And the school has said that their initial thought is that they would not like the bathrooms to be open and available during school hours. And Commissioner Clark has asked at prior Parks and Recreation Committee meetings, what exactly does that mean? And we don't have that information, and that's part of creating the IGA and getting everybody's input. The way I interpreted it when it was said to me was during the regular school day, during the school year, not during after school activities, not during summer school, not if there's a weekend event going on in the schools. But that is a question that we definitely need to get a more concrete answer to.
I recognize that schools have lots of security issues. They are our children, after all. What is their thinking behind no use of the bathroom? It's clearly some concern over security.
Yeah, it's a security concern. And really it's because while there's no access into the school building by way of the washrooms, there is a shared wall with classroom space and school space that is used during the school day. So, you think about, a horrible, scenario of someone putting an explosive along that wall. That's a concern, at least initially, by the school. I don't necessarily know if maybe a little more thought goes into that if they change their opinion, but we all know that safety of our children is of the most paramount in all of our minds, and no more so than our school professionals.
You also have to consider the fact that if these restrooms open out onto onto their driveway, basically the driveway that is used whenever school is in session, so there's even just a safety issue for the children or the students who may be going into, want to use the restroom and they're crossing a you know, asphalt driveway that is in use. So it's, I can't see that being, you know, and it's in use fairly often. So it's, I can't see that being, you know, the school wanting that to happen.
I'm not questioning it. The school district is certainly, they should be concerned about the safety and security of their children, and not for me to argue that point. Okay.
Any other questions on the IGA?
Well, so if we're using the schools for bathrooms, it would not occur during school hours, but it would occur during our major usage of the parks when we have team events out there, correct?
I don't know if you can say that.
Well,
Right.
I was asking that.
That's the
Yeah.
problem. We don't know that yet.
Right. My interpretation, Commissioner Abbott, is exactly as you're stating it, is that in a practice on a Tuesday night, the bathrooms could be open, games on a Saturday, the bathrooms could be open. But to Commissioner Clark's questions in the past and her point right now, we don't have that in writing. We don't have those details. And that's, you know, the kind of the problem with the IGA process is, you know, I can have a conversation with the superintendent of schools, but she has a board she answers to. I have a board I answer to. And there's a lot of other thoughts and opinions that must be incorporated into that document before it becomes a final document.
So there's some uncertainty. It's fair to say there's some uncertainty with regard to the IGA, both in terms of the usage and in terms of how the IGA might eventually turn out. I've also, in terms of the bathroom's termination, would you like to speak on that issue? Is that an unknown? Or is that kind of?
There's some initial language in the draft IGA. Again, we drafted the IGA that allows for termination on both sides. We don't want anyone to, you know, have to live with an untenable situation. Obviously, we would work through all situations as we do with the school district that are minor, but anything that is unsolvable, we don't want anyone to be obligated to a bad situation.
What did we run up? I'm sorry, I'm asking this question. Did we run up any cost estimates on what it would take to build these into the school?
No, Superintendent Solberg's staff is trying to coordinate with school staff to get access so they can take a look and take measurements and see how things meet up with ADA requirements and what needs to be done. But we have not accomplished that task yet.
Superintendent Solberg, is there plumbing and drainage in that area already?
Within the bathrooms at the school? Yes.
Yeah. What would be our bathrooms there?
They're existing bathrooms now, Commissioner Abbott.
Correct.
We're talking about a remodel, basically.
Correct.
Okay, so it would be, let's just say, a fraction of the cost. That's safe to say. I would say a considerable fraction, but we don't know.
I would agree with that.
Okay, but there's a lot of uncertainty here about where we're going to end up with these. Okay.
At the end of the day, though, D39 will have the ability, and it has to be negotiated through the IGA when they have the ability to do it, but they will control our access to the bathrooms. We will not control that in the long term.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah, and then that, so I sort of look at those bathrooms as a bonus, and I would not count on them.
That's an interpretation that you certainly can make.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's a great deal of uncertainty, even were we to, you know, reach a suitable arrangement for all parties. There could be quite a few stipulations. So in counting on another entity or another agency's facilities is probably iffy.
Any other comments on the bathrooms? Well, or about the IGA, and then we can get on to the bathrooms themselves.
I guess just sort of picking up and offering a counterpoint to Julia's perspective, that certainly is possibly true, but it could also result in savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars which would lead me to the conclusion that sort of what's the hurry? And I think we should have complete information before we make a decision. So if we find out that that the school district wouldn't be able to negotiate these points on the IGA for another year or 2 or 3, well, yeah, at some point we have to move on. But if we have a draft of the document, I think it would make a lot of sense for us to get that over to them, to have those conversations, so then this board could make a decision with accurate information. And I'll let it go at that.
But Mike, I think the reality is no matter what we negotiate with them, they will always have the opportunity to kick us out at some point in time in the not very distant future.
We always have the opportunity to build a bathroom, if I may counter. So
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So.
Look, again, I'm waiting for public comment. I don't, I know we've had tons of public comment, but this is the moment. It's on the agenda. And so I know we got a lot of people lined up here to kind of say something. I'd like to go in with my mind open.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about bathrooms in general then.
Well, somebody else, unless I've got something to say, but somebody else.
I like them. I use them almost every day. So, no, I think that, not all bathrooms are created equal. And I think if we do go this direction, to put in a new one, that I just want to make sure that we do something that's nice and that's not an eyesore that we don't regret later on.
I see the question before us, threefold question. Do we vote on a bathroom? Do we wait for the junior high? I think when we get to that in Parks and Rec, that'll be one of the questions. I see the second question is, okay, if we're going to move on and we're going to be talking about bathrooms, where would the bathrooms be located? That'll be the second question. And the third question, which came up tonight, which I'm not sure I'm going to be asked to weigh in on, and I'm fine not weighing in on this, are all the ancillary things that this bathroom might contain. And that's kind of new to me, and picnic shelters and things like that. If this board wishes to take that issue up now, I guess so, but I don't need to. I can stop at number 2. I can stop at number 1 if we, yeah. But if we get to number 2, where is it going to go? I'm willing to weigh in on that discussion.
Yeah, Steve, maybe you can let us up, because I think the first 2 items were on the agenda. I don't believe the third was on the agenda.
Correct. I think what Commissioner Abbott is saying is there's a lot of details that still need to be designed, and that is not the question here tonight. Those are, yes. Once the board gives the direction of yes to bathrooms and yes to a location, then a lot more work needs to be done before there's a final design with actual costs associated with it for a final approval.
Yep.
Then I'm off the hook for that. Okay.
All right. Anybody want to weigh in on bathrooms and location? Nobody want? I mean, I will jump out there. Just to get things rolling, unless somebody else wants to jump in first.
And no. I'll just say that having with 4 kids, I've been to community play fields for hours at a time from various sports, from baseball to soccer, to other, just other events happening. And the lack of bathrooms at the play fields has been a significant drawback to our use of that. And the feedback that I receive from residents is that it's a drawback to many residents. And, so I do not think that the junior high bathrooms are they may possibly, but they're just very speculative as to whether those bathrooms become available and when they are going to be available, that I do not think that we can count on them in any certain way. And I said, even if they do become available, I think that in addition to that, other bathrooms are necessary and a needed amenity to these playfields that are heavily used by many residents in this town, from all over this village. So I think after hearing that, going with a centrally located bathroom, which is near where the playfields are used, is, which also had the benefit of being one of the lower cost locations. For me, that's where we should go. And then, yes, later on, decide what we want to add to that bathroom. But I'm definitely feel that that's, many other locations in the village. I'm thinking the Sailing Beach, people are asking, where are their bathrooms? Where are the bathrooms? Well, we have an opportunity right here to put a bathroom right here in community playfields and to benefit many residents in our village. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I agree with Commissioner Clark. As you know, she and I and Commissioner Murdoch have been on the Parks and Rec Committee, and we've discussed this issue for many months and looked at many options. I too feel that the bathrooms should be centrally located at that C location. Again, they're the most cost effective. I think it'll provide the most access for all the fields. Porta potties are just not a strong option. I don't feel for especially younger children. I know not everybody has them, but they're scared of them a little bit because there's just like a big hole in the ground, and and you have a kid that won't go to the bathroom or whatever. It's hard for them to reconcile with that. So having a permanent bathroom, I think, is a must. Moving forward, I agree that I don't know that the location at the junior high will be a feasible option when there are kids out there and we need it during programming. It might be during the day if there's a little soccer kicker class going on or something like that, and those bathrooms aren't available because school is in session or something like that. So I think we do need some permanent bathrooms. And I think after looking at this, like I said, for months, the C location is the most feasible and best option for us moving forward.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So I'll add a comment. In this community, many people move here, and in fact, I'm fairly certain that many people listening to the call moved here for the quality of schools and the quality of life. And so you come as a young family often, and as a young family making perhaps a significant purchase, maybe the largest purchase they've made up to that point in purchasing a primary residence, you have certain expectations, and it is reasonable to have an expectation of washrooms at a park of our community's caliber. And I think that is not an outlandish question. I think it's very appropriate. In fact, anyone who goes to neighboring communities, whether they are using passive recreation or involved in leagues, or they will find restrooms. And it's almost laughable that we do not have them. And so I think it is reasonable to proceed on a path that the Parks and Rec Committee has been on for several months now. I do feel strongly that we cannot hinge our future on an unknown. And there have been, many months to tour the restrooms or to evaluate the restrooms. And we know that there will be significant renovations involved in any D39 restroom if selected. And so while we pursue that path, which I think is an important one, we also need to pursue a secondary path, which is our own. And on the days that are as busy as some of us have described, you will need more than simply the restrooms, which are in the D39 bathrooms. And so as a first statement, I am pro restroom. Secondly, I'm in favor of a location that is as far away as possible from the residences. I think it is appropriate that these are not near someone's home. And I very much understand the concerns that any neighboring resident would have about the location. And so for that reason, I am in favor of the locations that are closest to the field, to the baseball fields, and closest to the west side of the park. I recognize that that opinion may be an outlier, but it makes sense to me that they would be closest to the largest parking areas and closest to the largest attractions, which tend to include the baseball fields, as well as the playground. And so when someone might have to walk across the park, it would be understandable that they would walk toward a location that's near other amenities. So that would, to me, preserve as much open space as possible, which I know is another primary concern, and also help contribute to some landscaping or camouflage around the facility as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to
Sure.
share their thoughts?
Yeah. There's an awful lot that Commissioner Goebel just said that I agree with. I certainly have been as Commissioner Goebel said, I'm pro bathroom. And I have reconciled myself to be able to say the same thing, that we should have some kind of bathroom at community playfields. I recognize that this moment that we've arrived at is the last time I have an opportunity to vote on this issue. And I don't think that that's an opportunity that I need to seize. And so there's a lot of unknowns about the junior high, whether or not it could be worked out or not. And again, we can always build our own bathrooms. So just as a matter, just so people know what's coming, I know that we're going to vote on this later. I do want to hear the public. I will move to table. I don't expect that to pass, but what that means is table the question to do more investigation with regard to the junior high. That probably won't pass. In which case we will then be discussing the actual location and the bathrooms themselves and have to vote on that issue. I'm going to wait to hear from the various community members before I solidify my feelings about where a bathroom ought to go or if it should go. I do think we need a bathroom, but it could be in the junior high, and I haven't really given up on that. So that's my view so far. We'll see. I want to hear from people, and we'll have a lively debate afterwards, I'm sure. That's all I've got.
Thanks. Commissioner Murdoch, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I think.
Commissioner Murdoch? I
Am
may be
muted?
frozen.
Am I better now?
I can hear you, Mike.
Am I okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. What other folks have said, I would agree with. I am 100% pro bathrooms, unambiguously, and I firmly believe that porta potties are not functionally equivalent. I'm really not ready to discuss the pros and cons of different locations because I just see that discussion as being premature. I think that we should, fully understand what the options are with the junior high. I think if that takes another month or another two, no big deal. But if we end up going forward with this discussion, then I'll kind of listen to what people say, and I'm sure I'll weigh in at that point. I think the only comment, and I know this is probably way out in left field, if we do end up building a separate restroom structure or a restroom and a picnic structure, I'd like to see solar on it. But I'm not really ready to talk about specific locations because I'm still hoping that we're going to, give it another month or two with District 39 and the junior high.
Tom, you got to add that to your budget.
Yes, sir. No problem.
It's in the contingency, isn't it?
Am I thinking that maybe we lost Commissioner Anderson? All right.
I don't see him.
I can see him, I just can't hear him.
See, I don't even see him on my screen
He's
anymore.
at
Oh,
your
no,
mic.
I see him. I see
Now-
him.
Enough?
He's
Go ahead.
back. He's back. Okay.
Sorry about that. No, I lost you guys for a while and I had to come back in. And then when I come back in, it automatically mutes me. So, okay, so let me give you my thoughts on the bathroom. I think we've been talking about this long enough. It's 2021. Bathrooms at a community playfield like ours have been the norm for decades at this point. We are way, way overdue, and pushing this out and delaying it is to me, just not going to be anything that I can't support. This is something we need to move ahead with. It's long overdue. I like location C. It's far enough away from the closest house that it minimizes, it's not like in somebody's backyard. It's more central, so people who are playing on the east side of the fields don't have to go all the way over to the tennis courts or baseball fields to get a place to go to the bathroom. We can't rely on D39 to forever allow us to have bathrooms. And, honestly, this is the time we're talking about it. If you say, well, we can always do a bathroom later, the chances are it gets a lot harder and harder. And I think at this point in time, this is the moment for the bathrooms. And I think we have to seize it. That's it.
I would agree with that.
And I also add that if the location C also then can, the bathroom there can incorporate the irrigation system that is above ground and has apparently upset many people, so that and that so instead of having two above ground structures, we just have one. So just
I forgot to mention that. You're
pointing that out too.
And it's also the cheapest location too, other than not doing it. Anybody else before we move on, or should we go to public comment? Executive Director Wilson, why don't we go to public comment?
Great. Most of us have done this before, but we're going to do it a little bit different. I'm not going to go around and ask everybody. If you could mouse down to the reactions button, that gives you the opportunity to raise your hand. That'll line everybody up in the queue for me. I'll call on you. Remember that our comment policy restricts to 3 minutes. I will be timing that. And when we reach 3 minutes, I will let you know. So the first name I see is Walter Keats.
Thanks. On the path, my criteria would certainly be that it has to be, if there must be a path, it has to be permeable is the first thing. I like the idea of a mile. It seems to me it should be able to be done, but certainly a half mile solves a lot of problems of not having to worry about as much with the drainage. Just to clarify with the drainage, I think most of us, when we talk about the drainage on the north side, we're not talking about in the fields. If there were problems in the fields, everybody would have been bitching a lot longer before. Okay, we're complaining about the drainage north of the field and the northeast part. Where the path would go. The path is not going through the field, it's going around it. Okay. Also, if you're going to have a path, there ought to be signage. Just what somebody else mentioned too. 1/10 of a mile, 1/4 of a mile, whatever. I would recommend it starts near the junior high, because they're the ones that are doing that mile run every Thursday. I'm glad to hear that. Looks like drainage is included in that project already. The restrooms, I agree with Mike that I'm not sure why there's such a hurry to do it when I don't think you have enough data. Regarding the junior high, I'm not clear why one would spend money to change that. My understanding is with ADA, if you make a change, and this is an existing structure, if you make a change to it, then you got to make it AD compliant, which is going to cost you thousands of dollars. So that would certainly be pretty stupid if you're going to build an actual, $400,000, $600,000 restroom. So I'm not clear why that would be there. But to me, the missing part is data. You don't know how many people are using these things. If you can use those and you put some clickers on these doors, then you'll find out whether 2 family units is enough. My understanding is that somewhere 95 to 98% of all the kids who play baseball are boys. So why do you want to have a family room? Why not have a boys' room that has a bunch of urinals on the side? So you could have 5 kids go in there in between the thing and do it a lot faster. If you don't have any data, how, just coming up with, 2 family rooms doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's what I would recommend, is postponing this. You can always do a permanent one later, but if there's going to be a permanent one, it ought to be in B. Putting it in the center is stupid. This is the park district, not the recreation district. This is a park. Why would you put this big thing? And now you're going to combine it with the pumps. Think of this, that makes it even bigger building, and then you want to have a awning out there and stuff too. I mean, this is going to be a massive structure in the center of the park. That does not make sense. It should be in B, whatever the result is, if there's going to be a park. Thanks.
Gordon, I'd like to just address one thing that Mr. Keats said.
Well, Brian, why don't you let everybody make their comments, and if there's something later on, we got plenty of opportunities to address stuff going forward. Steve, why don't we keep moving?
Okay.
Getting comments, because we can't get into conversations here.
Sure. Next, I see Kathy.
Hi, I've spoken at these meetings before. I am one of the neighbors regarding the pathway. If you're talking about doing the 1 mile along the southwest side, there are trees all along that, not just on the northeast side or the southeast side of the park. And our house was within 10 feet of the trees. So you're going to have to go on the other side of the trees. And that means you have to take it another 10 feet out into the field so that you're not going to damage any of those root structures on those trees. It's not just one tree along there. There's a whole bunch of cottonwoods along there and other trees in that field. And as a neighbor, I would feel horrified if you removed these at least 70-year-old trees from this neighborhood. First of all, it's going to do all kinds of wreak havoc to my yard and to the wildlife in the neighborhood. And I really think you need to be considerate about that. I'm also concerned, if you're going to put this pathway so close to people's homes, what that's going to do in terms of the drainage near our homes. Go with the ½ mile and don't put them so close to people's homes. I'd be thrilled with that. And I know people would be happy to have a ½ mile marked pathway that people could, do their running with. The other side too is if you put in this all the way around in the winter time, people do cross-country ski. I don't know that what a pathway would do to the skis, but I don't think it would be beneficial to the skis. Regarding the bathrooms, please put them over closer to the baseball fields. You've got a huge footprint out there right now. It will be much easier to make repairs, to maintain them if you're closer to the parking lot than if you have to bring your trucks, which are coming into since the irrigation system has been put in. There have been trucks in along the concrete pathway almost every single day for like the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so I would ask that you please, I'm willing to compromise. We know that there's a need for a bathroom with all of the action that goes on there, but the bathroom shouldn't be open 24 hours a day. And it shouldn't, it should be in a place where people can have easy access from the parking lot. That's it. I've said enough. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, I see Mike Doyle.
Sorry, Steve, I lost myself. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to say that my wife and I obviously submitted our thoughts on the 1 mile path option. And we're encouraged to see that it looks like it is an option based on discussions tonight. So I hope we can make that work. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that we talked about in our proposal since you've all seen it. I do want to say just a couple things. The mile really is the standard of exercise. I mean, studies have been shown that people are more likely to exercise when they have a mile distance kind of as a marker. Anything less than that seems like it isn't delivering the health benefits that make it worthwhile to them. My concern about a half mile barrier is that I think it's going to reduce usage. Some people don't want to walk around in circles. Maybe some people do, but a lot of people do not. And when we talk about runners, we're not talking about just marathon runners here. We're not talking about people who are going to run 18 miles on this path. You're talking about people that run 2 or 3 miles. And a 2 or 3 mile, 1 mile path for a 2 or 3 mile run is pretty good. 6 laps is not. And again, I worry you're just not going to get the usage out of it if you reduce it to a half mile. I think at this point in our country, we don't need barriers for people doing fitness activities. You've got 40% of the population obese. You've got heart disease, diabetes are rampant. We just went through a pandemic which affected people that had these pre-existing conditions at twice the rate of other people. We need to get healthier. And as a village, we need to be encouraging people to be healthier and giving them opportunities to be healthier. And I think that this 1 mile path can go a long way to doing that in the center of our community. And, is it worth it? The question was, it's more expensive than the half mile. Well, is public health worth it? I mean, if we're going to spend a lot of money on a bathroom that serves one biological function, why can't we spend money that would support other biological functions, which is our health? So I think that it is important and it is worth the investment. I think we should look at it like that, not only in the short term, but in the long-term health of our community for residents of all ages, from kids to seniors. Then the second point I just want to make that we also made in our proposal is about aesthetics, because I think aesthetics do count. And Community Playfield is a beautiful park, but it is starting to feel to me like a hodgepodge of elements, from fields to courts to a grove of cottonwood trees, and nothing is really tying it together. If you were going to start this park over from day one, I don't think you'd design it the way you have it right now. You probably would have some kind of unifying element. And the 1 mile path could be that, something that encircles the whole thing and ties it together. We spent a lot of effort trying to save these cottonwood trees. We did that. Why don't we let people enjoy them? Create a path where they can walk all around the park and get to see them and experience them.
We're at 3 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next, I see Avery Miller.
Hi, I just have a question kind of for either like Mr. Wilson or any of the board members. I'm just kind of confused on what the downside of the location, like see near the baseball fields would be, because I feel like I don't think making people like walk further from some of the fields is that big of a deal. And like for safety of like the high school students that are there, I think it makes more sense to have it further away, if that makes sense, because like obviously we've seen in the recent decade and stuff like that, like bad things happening at schools. So I was just wondering about that.
Great, thank you.
Didn't understand the question. I'm sorry, Avery. I didn't understand the question. What were you asking?
I'm just wondering on what like the argument would be like to have the location like not like that was near a school or like near the neighbor's houses, if there's an option for it to be like near the baseball fields. No one has to answer. It could be rhetorical, but and like keeping the neighbors happy, as we just heard from like some neighbors, but yeah.
Great, thank you. Next, I see Alan Golden.
Sorry, I just moved on the screen. Again, Alan Golden, 2516 Laurel Lane, south side of the park. I'll start with the track. Most of us can figure out that if I go around a half-mile track twice, I get a mile. It's still longer than almost any high school and most collegiate tracks that people train on who are elite athletes. And the fact that you can do it for much less money, you don't worry about the trees, you don't worry about annoying the neighbors on the south side of the park, makes the half-mile track, if you're going to put one of these things in, I think the best option. And again, the plan where you have it up around the baseball diamonds, no one gets in nobody's way. And again, you want to run a mile, go around twice. And you can put signage in, that says, every quarter mile, and you can keep track. I don't think this is a big issue. I really don't. So that's my comment on, and of course, permeable and all that other stuff we've talked about pretty much ad nauseum. As far as the bathrooms go, I heard, by the way, I believe I agree with Commissioner Goebel in her view of putting the bathrooms to the west side of the park, near the parking lot, near the playground, where they could be used for people more conveniently who bring their kids to the playground that's on the west side of the park. But the thing I really worried about is putting this structure, another structure, in the middle of one of the nicest open areas in Wilmette. And I noticed the Park District did such a fabulous job of camouflaging the pump that's now sitting out there, right? There's no greenery, there are no bushes, there's no anything put around there because there's no plan. It's, shoot, ready, aim. We'll do something, then we'll figure out how to do it later. If you're going to put a structure up, I don't care where it is, you need to have a plan first to how you're going to camouflage it, make it look good. As the gentleman before me said, talk about aesthetics. That's a great idea. What are you going to do around the bathroom? No matter where you put it. I see nothing about what you're going to do to camouflage that structure or make it look just like something you dropped in the middle of the park. And again, if you're going to put a bathroom in, and I really also believe that we should be exploring fully District 39 facilities before you make that decision. Why do it? Why you can always put a bathroom in later. Let's see what District 39 has to offer. What's the rush? But if you're going to put a bathroom in, and you seem hell-bent on doing it, if you're going to put a bathroom in the west side of the park, away from the middle where it's an eyesore for everybody. So that's it for me tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I see Arnie Eisenberg.
Thank you. Arnie Eisenberg, Pomona Lane. I have spoken to the committee, maybe the board before. The best drainage is grass. And there's grass there. Every runner that I know has a watch. It tells him exactly how far he's run. And they run around the park as much as they want. They run around the perimeter, they run across the middle, they run across diagonally, they run around the park. They've never, for 50 years, they've never had a path to tell them where they had to run. So I think what you're doing is spending our money for no reason. Now, as far as the bathroom goes, I appreciate why you're hesitant to wait for the school board to make a deal and how you're afraid that the school board may back out of it. After all, we just had one governmental body blackmail another governmental body to let them put tanks underneath the ground and charge them millions of dollars of our money to allow them to do that for the community. So I appreciate why you don't trust the school district. Some people might not trust you. Wonder why. Now, when you put this bathroom in, and you're going to put this bathroom in, I mean, this Clark Wilson Memorial Sports Complex bathroom will go in. I know it's going to go in. At least push it where people really don't put it where some of the soccer fields are. Move it further west where the tennis players can get to it, the baseball players can get to it. The concept of putting it where you've got it is just in the middle, which is like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not where the use is. The use is further west. Finally, Finally, could you have picked an uglier example? The village is full of mid-century modern architecture. The city hall is similar, the junior high, and you give us an example of a tall peak garbage structure. Now I know it was an example, but I think that your end result is going to be just as ugly because you don't. Well, the board members care, and I should have started by thanking the board for all the work you've done for the last years, and those members that are leaving. I appreciate all the work you've done. Don't vote to put an ugly structure in the middle of Wilmette, where everybody that comes to the suburb for a game will see this ugly embarrassment. I've gone to Glencoe. They have a bathroom. It's not ugly. So if you're going to put money into it, put the money in to make the bathroom, because you've decided you're going to put a bathroom in, put the money to make the bathroom a pretty structure. Don't add all the other stuff and make it uglier and uglier and bigger and bigger. And why couldn't those pumps have been underground? Why can't part of the bathroom be underground? Did anybody consider the fact that you can lower these structures by digging down? I don't think you've really thought this through. And I'm very disappointed in the concept of this bathroom and where you're putting it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, I see Neil's iPad.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
You're good.
Yes, yes, you are.
Good, very good, yes. Neil Ferrari, 2546 Laurel Lane. Like Arnie on the south side of the, like Alan Golden on the south side of the park. First of all, I want to thank the board for changing the way you're soliciting public comments. Normally the 3 minutes before anybody has a chance to present anything makes it very difficult to comment. This is a much better way, and I hope you continue to do it this way. I'm going to make just a couple of comments, a lot of short little statements. One, somebody mentioned about half mile being similar to only having 8 holes in the golf course and not 9. Well, I think the reason they have 9 sometimes is so you can play twice, so you can play 18 holes. Think about that for a half mile. I've said before at the Park and Recs Committee meetings, so some of the other commissioners haven't heard this, I've often talked about how incomplete the cost estimates have been for both the path and for the buildings. I was very pleased to see in this package a much more, granted it's a prefab, but a much more thorough estimate for what it would be. And now that we see what it is, I think it should give all of us pause to say, wait a second, let's really think about this some more. So far, we've heard a lot of anecdotal information about where usage is. You have to admit, at this point, we know nothing about usage. There's been no data collected. And I think that we should pause and look a little bit based on using the District 39 bathrooms, what the usage is. I agree with some of the other people who have mentioned that putting it at sea is in the middle of the park. That's true, but that's not where the middle of all the usage is. If you look at the ball fields, the tennis courts, in addition to soccer, B is the center of the park of usage. That's my anecdote. We all have our own anecdotes because we don't have any data. Lastly, somebody's mentioned having a plan. The neighbors have talked about this right from the beginning. We do something, and then later on, we try to figure out how to make it work. Putting in the drainage along the south side of the park, I'm pretty well assured, because I've done my own measurements out there, there's no way you're going to get a path 6 foot, never 8 foot, maybe 5 foot, because of the additional drainage that has been put in just on the north side of the Cottonwoods. So I'm very pleased to see we now have to get down from the 100 foot to the 5 foot level of actually going in there and looking to see what can be done. And I bet you're gonna find it can't be done. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see Faye Jacobs.
Hi, I'm Faye Jacobs, Pomona Lane. I've spoken before. First of all, I really appreciate all the time all the board members have put in. Sounds like you've really been thinking about all that, just a lot of time, and I really appreciate it. And I really like what Mike Doyle was saying about the path. It sounds like he's put in a lot of thoughts, and I've been talking to various gym teachers here at the Highcrest School, and I guess they think that there's a mile that's been going to be put in, and they're very excited about that for all of their students over here in the east side of the park. Whatever decision you make, I support. And part of me thinks that Sir Budford should perhaps vote as well tonight, but I don't think that's going to happen. Regarding the bathrooms, absolutely, it should be in the B location. C is just, it just blows my mind that it's even being considered. It's just so, it's just not right. It would look terrible on top of that very unsafe structure that's looks like it should be on the moon. I'm not sure you're all familiar with it, but just take a peek and you'll see what I mean. It's very unsafe. Kids are going to be jumping in it. And I'm also, this is on the side, but those orange structures that kind of, they look like torpedoes that are in the park. They seem to be 20 feet from each other. There's several of them. Those going to go underground. I think they're cable markers. I see kids playing on those as well. And regarding what Mr. Keats said, yes, there should definitely be a plan to at least see what the usage is, along with Neil. I don't know what your last name is. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Absolute B, and consider the Highcrest students as well. And thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Next, I see Richard Pinner.
Good evening, thank you. Richard Pinner, Pomona Lane. It seems that there's still questions being asked by board members that would mean you're not in a position to lay vote tonight on either the path or the restrooms. I would also like to echo Neil and thank the board for giving us the opportunity to review and speak before you make your decisions. And I also hope it continues. And I thank the board for the consideration and effort that has been put in to both of these items. The fact that there isn't a clear answer on a mile track or path and whether it's possible doesn't mean that, obviously means that you're unable to vote on that without the information. As far as the restrooms go, I think you know my position on that. I don't agree with them. There is an alternative at Wilmette Junior High that should be explored. And I find it an incredible amount of money to bid into something when there are alternatives there. And as Commissioner Abbott, and I think Commissioner Murdoch said, to be able to make a decision to build them later, your pot of cash isn't going to expire. So keep that money in the pocket for restrooms building later on. If you do vote to go ahead, then I would agree with some of the other presenters tonight, and option B has to be your best choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see Bridge.
Hi, this is Bridge Shaw. I'm at 2427 Pomona Lane. First of all, I thank everyone, every board member's time for tonight. I think listening to everybody on the call today, half-mile track, I believe is a good option as articulated by many of you. to perhaps protect the trees as well. We keep forgetting those are 70+ years old trees. On the restroom, I think after hearing commissioners' comments about the restroom at school, its access and security, etc., I firmly believe, like many of you have said today, the option B by the baseball fields makes a lot of sense, as a bathroom structure would be part of many buildings around the area, kind of a camouflage. And I think Commissioner Goebel perfectly articulate when she mentioned to preserve the open areas and far away from all the residents. So I think here at option B is where little extra costs would be well justified compared to the irrigation pumps and other rushed areas that we have spent money at. So B is where the center is for tennis court, baseball fields, soccer fields, and I think it also preserves the beauty of the park. And again, I think landscaping as any location for bathroom and track should be done with the focus on aesthetics, and landscaping should be more focused by protecting the existing trees that has been around for a long time. So again, when it comes to restroom, option B is a very clear choice and makes a lot of sense from all angles. And this is where a little extra money, if you have to spend, it's probably well justified. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kent Newscable. You need to unmute, Mr. Newscable.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Ken Newscable, 2530 Laurel Lane. I sent an email yesterday about kind of my thoughts on the process, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a delay as much as maybe tabling it in your terms. And some of my reasons go back to the IGA that started with the stormwater. And kind of one of the things I feel like has been missing is the landscape comprehensive plan, or really a plan overall for the park, which I think a lot of people have reiterated how important the plan is to kind of make these things all work together and create a unified, view for the village and for visitors. I don't think it needs to be on the scale of the Gilson Park plan, but it seems a fraction of that would go a long way to make this a nice compromise for everybody. Another reason I think tabling makes sense is I think this last year has seen everybody affected differently, and the pandemic has affected everyone's activities. So what we see today in the park, or two months ago, is going to be very different 2 years from now. I think that needs to be thought about seriously. I'd also say that this park might be one of the most, as far as the number of neighbors it affects directly because of its location. Gilson is cut off, from its neighbors by streets. Many of the other parks have similar boundaries of streets. And I think that's very important that the neighbors have an important voice here. And I think you've heard many of them tonight. Certainly the junior high restrooms is an important consideration as far as when this decision is made. And I think that should be heard out before a decision is made. Something else I think that is really critical, that I don't know where it sits in the park district's kind of overall thought process, is kind of the carbon footprint and sustainability efforts that are important to our community and our planet. And I know that's big picture, but are we even talking about the impact of any of these projects and how their footprint affects, all of us? I really don't see a need to move forward with a restroom at this point. If there is one put in, certainly it makes sense to me if you're in a park to exercise, that you're going to walk another 500 feet to a bathroom, and it should be a no-brainer. It should go on the site where it's easy to get to for security, for maintenance, and that would be probably closer to the tennis courts and the west side near the playground. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see GSCRINE, G Screen maybe.
Yeah, Greg Skrine. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to the board for taking my comments. Greg Skrine, I live 2606 Laurel Lane, so on the south side of the park. Yeah, just wanted to make a few comments. So, I go back to Arnie's comments. It seems to be a pot of money burning a hole in the board's pocket here with regard to the IGA and the water vault. So concerned just a little bit about stewardship of my tax dollars, which I see on my quarterly water bill now. So there seems to be money to spend. With regard to these specific projects, I'll address the path first. My first concern is why are we considering paving or urbanizing this park? Whether it be a center path or crushed stone or what have you, it's still paving a portion of the park. Solution for something that where there's no problem. I've been here for 18 years. I run myself 4 or 5 times a week, 3 miles. I run through the park, but there's plenty of paved space around Wilmette. Everyone these days has an app on their phone that'll tell you how far you ran to within the meter or two. So as a distance path is seems like a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And really just the notion of paving our precious green space, it doesn't make sense to me in any respect. I think that the notion that, then from a, not in my backyard perspective, just to be straightforward, the idea of creating pathways that funnel people past your backyard on a continuous ongoing basis just seems inconsiderate in terms of how it's proposed, at least on the south side. I haven't heard from the north side neighbors, but funneling folks towards your backyard, they're already, it's a park, so people are back there, but having folks always coming by your yard on this path, for a path that's unnecessary, seems a bit untenable. With regard to the bathroom, I think exploring the option with D39 makes sense, but to Kent's point and to Commissioner Goebel's point, that if you're going to put one in, the no-brainer place to put it in is over by the tennis courts on the west side, I think, without a doubt. That pump house in the middle of the park now is an eyesore, so exacerbating that with a bigger structure. Again, we're urbanizing, paving over, developing our green space, and you don't get any more of it. It only gets smaller, it never gets bigger. So thanks for taking my comment.
Thank you. The last hand I see up is Charlie Hargrave.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having a moment to speak. And thank you for the board for opening up these meetings and giving us a better opportunity to chime in on our feelings and such. Perhaps the intergovernmental agreement that's being spoken about this evening, having to do with agreement with D39's restroom, maybe call it IGA2, because as a constituent in Wilmette, the intergovernmental agreement having to do with the stormwater vault and subsequently then the installation of an irrigation system was a complete surprise to many of my neighbors and myself. And sorry, I'm at 2540 Laurel Lane, south side of the park. And so all of a sudden, the vault project is nearing completion and pennants show up all over just west of that project. And I call the park board to say, what's this? And they say, oh, it's the intergovernmental agreement. So that's how we end up with the desert camouflage pumping station dead center in the middle of my view of an open space. And not just mine, sorry, all my neighbors. My expectation of government and agreements between governmental agencies is for a synergistic effect to our benefit, and rather than just an eyesore, which we've now witnessed irrigating during a rainstorm. Maybe it was just a test, but still, I don't see how you can move forward on a bathroom decision without giving the governmental agencies the opportunity to collude on our behalf. And I'm glad that many of the people who spoke before me, board members initiating it, the thought of math on the path, where a half mile times 2, we know what that means. So I'm more in favor of a half mile path because you're running out of places to put it on the south edge of the park. Very, very narrow areas there for you to install anything. Thanks for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, I see Rick Prohoff.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
2435 Pomona Lane. And as you all know, I've expressed myself often quite vociferously from time to time. My thoughts tonight are that there's been a lot of acknowledgements from the park board that I appreciate. I know you all have worked hard. There's no question about that. You volunteer your time, you put in a lot of effort, but with respect to this project, I think disappointment is my real reaction to this. You don't seem to have a plan to vote on. The committee has done an incredible job, thanks to Mike Murdoch. He has taken what was mistrust of this board and this staff and turned it around in the last 4 or 5 months. Yes, it took time. He delayed it, and he did create this kind of process, open and transparent, with the ability to comment, have notice ahead of time. And so the whole discussion here about a path, it's been a process of Mike's efforts to do what Julia had said, which I greatly appreciate her comments tonight, because she's the one and only board member that's actually reflected a consensus process in all this. It's not just a negotiation. We're not here to make demands on you. This is not the process. The process is that you listen to the people who will be impacted the greatest. There are quite a few neighbors to this park. This is not a small park. And I've lived here for 32 years, and I agreed over time that a bathroom's probably required. And I understand, because of this commenting process, that it does make sense. How you get there, and Gordon, to say that it's not going to happen because you're off the board, or that Amy's off the board, and therefore you pick the one spot that's still very objectionable to the members around my community here that live around this park. That's not a way to go. There's time to make these decisions. There's no rush to make these decisions until there's a real plan. The members of the community around this park have sought a plan, and as one gentleman mentioned tonight, it doesn't have to be what Gilson is. This is not the Lakefront Park District or project, but it's a unique opportunity with $3+ million for the 3 parks. Where is the plan? Why do you need to rush through this? If there's time, as Mike has tried to endeavor with Steve to figure out what the school board might be able to do, might not be able to do, or whether it's worth expending that kind of money. All I'm saying is that with regard to the bathroom in particular now, because I think the path will take its own course with your process. And I have no thoughts about whether it should be the half mile or the mile. And I'm perfectly willing to see whatever comes of your discussion, because you've eliminated the lights, which we haven't talked about. It's been a compromise process all the way through, and Mike has led us through that process. I think there's acceptance that there is a need for a bathroom. I don't think there's acceptance for a need for a bathroom placement based on the cost that's there today, because the irrigation system that you put in with the pumps that are there was through to a lack of planning. The pumps were put where they are because it was over an existing fire hydrant. It's as simple as that. It was the most direct, cost-effective way to put it. It had no design element to it. It was sheerly driven by the cost and the manner in which the tapping of the water main comes out at that location. Could it have been a further, and how many feet really is it to the west that we're talking about? It's not that far. As one of these people said, you're there for exercise. I don't think a couple extra 100 feet is going to matter. And if the data proves it out, which you should consider in connection with real planning and real design, then it should be done in a sustainable way and not been rushed through on a last meeting when we already have new board members elected. So I won't comment about the other things. I do appreciate the time all of you expended, but I thank Mike again for his efforts to pull this back to a point where it is a real open and transparent process, and it will be going forward. I have great confidence that the new board will be doing that in the most positive light. So Julia, thank you again. Your comments are right, spot on. It's about compromises, it's about respect, and it's about accepting the viewpoint of others. And she hit it right on the head. So thank you all. Brian, I want to thank you in particular also for all your good work over the years. And Gordon, I hope you think more sustainably in the future. Thank you very much.
All right. Last hand I see up is Pete. Need you to unmute. There you are.
My daughter helped me out. Okay, thanks. Some of us aren't as savvy with these stupid machines as the others are. Pretty much, Pete Eckert, I'm on Laurel Lane as well. There's a whole block of us that have been here responding, and they pretty well hit everything I believe on the head. Put the washroom on the west side. I worry about putting it away from the commercial buildings, in that maybe you can suck in some of the heat and not have to winterize it. If you put it out in the middle of the park, you've got a big problem with that. Also, the kids like to hide around buildings and trees during gym class. If we ever get to real gym classes again, you gotta be out here during the day and see what goes on. Again, I live in the south side where the boardwalk was suggested. I do go with the half-mile track, but a boardwalk would be terribly slick in the spring and fall. As well, it's a wonderful place for the skunks that we have to multiply even further. Yeah, we have possums as well, but the skunks, I've gone out there at 10 o'clock at night and you'll see a dozen skunks out there in the middle of your field out there. If someone wants to go out there with a gun, may want to shoot them or something. I don't know. Maybe a box to catch them in. The other thing you might consider, it hasn't been mentioned at all, and it's probably out of place here, but my daughter has mentioned the playground north of what was Fox Daycare is for very young children. You might consider upping the age for some of the equipment that maybe some other kids can go there too. Right. Thank you very much. Oh, one other comment. Putting a path behind our houses, make sure it's not a dike. We do have drainage coming from our houses toward the park as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Anderson, I have no other hands in the air.
All righty, let's move on to the next topic, and we'll obviously get to the discussion and the vote when we get to the committee reports for Parks and Rec. But in between, we've got the voucher approval.
I
And
think we have a resident trying to add a comment. Did I hear
Okay.
somebody?
Yeah, I was hearing some background there too as well.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are, Derek. Yes.
Yep. Go ahead, Derek.
My raise hand function isn't working for some reason. I apologize.
No worries.
Excuse me. My name is Derek Castillo. I'm at 2447 Pomona Lane. I've been on these calls quite frequently over the last several weeks and months. I appreciate you opening this up to public comment as always. Really, the main thing I feel strongly about is at this point in terms of things that are under discussion is the location of the bathroom. I'm very much opposed to location C and very much supportive of location A or B. There's been, at least in the meetings that I've attended thus far, not a whole lot of discussion in terms of usage patterns when soccer games and practices aren't taking place, which is obviously the overwhelming majority of the time. So I think it makes a lot more sense to place it closer to the playground, the parking lot, the batting cage, the basketball goals there behind the junior high, areas where there's a lot of flow of people and a lot of congregation of people. You know, I hate to be a worrywart, but you know, if you place that bathroom in the middle of the field where nobody's congregating, a child could walk in there, encounter trouble, and yell and scream, and nobody would hear him. I don't think that would be the case if it was over next to either A, the parking lot, tennis courts, or other areas, again, where adults are constantly congregating. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other late arrivals? I take it none. All right, let's move on to the voucher list. We get a motion to approve the voucher list?
Yes, I move to approve the voucher list in the amount of $1,008,385,080, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Wilson, or I guess Superintendent Foy is not on this call?
I do have a couple of remarks that were shared in the Finance Committee meeting, which occurred prior to the board meeting, and with respect to a couple of items that were raised in the voucher list, and I'll just pull that up. There's a few vendor changes that have occurred. Vanguard Energy is now NG, and Bell Fuel is now Avalon. And in both cases, there were favorable contracts negotiated. The energy contract is 2 years in length with a fixed rate. And similarly, the fuel change was also favorable for the Park District. In terms of the ICMA Retirement Trust that was mentioned in the voucher list, and this is different than we have seen previously. This is a deferred compensation fund that is available to employees, and it is funded on a periodic basis, and that is what that was. And I believe that wraps up the items that were covered in the course of the Finance Committee meeting. Did I miss anything, Commissioner Wilson, or excuse me, Executive Director Wilson?
Just got elected. Yeah, so I think the only thing I would clarify is the ICMA is a program that has been in place for a while. Maybe it's displayed a little bit differently on the voucher list because of our revamping of the way that looks. So maybe it stood out a little bit differently. And what that is it's a deferred compensation plan that is funded strictly by the employees on a voluntary basis out of their wages. There's no employer match to that. So it's similar to a corporate version of a 401k, but there is no employer match component to that.
Have we called it something differently in the past, Steve? Or because I don't remember seeing those initials on any voucher list before.
No, but they would have possibly been grouped in with payroll transfers because it's real what it is. It's really a withholding out of an employee's earnings and then transferred over.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Commissioner Abbott has an elaboration on the energy contract.
Well, as discussed in the Finance Committee meeting earlier tonight, as you say, the vendors, some of the fuel energy vendors, let's say, have changed. Engra, how do you pronounce Engra?
NG.
NG? There you go. Well, so is what I can remember. Is the new electrical supplier. And though we didn't get into any details, my understanding of what I heard tonight was that if we exceed our electrical allowance, again, I don't know the detail of that, the Park District would be possibly subjected to spot market energy pricing. And I just, look, I attended my last finance meeting tonight. So I just want to pass on, that concerns me as a concept. That's it. That's all I got to say.
And I will add a little more to that as well. That's not new and different with NG. It's been the way our energy contracts have worked historically with other providers. So I understand the concern that Commissioner Abbott is speaking to, but it's not a new practice by way of this provider.
Have we ever exceeded our allowance?
Yes, there are periodically times that does take place.
Oh, okay. I've said my piece.
All right. Any other questions or comments related to the voucher list? If not, could we have a vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler? You're muted, Commissioner Schisler.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goble,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Voucher list is approved.
Okay, next up is the executive director's report.
Most of my executive director's report was related to the agenda items here tonight, is explaining the materials in the packet for the community playfield discussion that is ongoing. Also a brief update on the Gilson Comprehensive Plan, mainly that the consultants are working on it and still intend to bring initial thoughts and concepts forward towards the end of April. And then looking further down your agenda, we do have a couple items, one underneath the Financial Planning and Policy Committee, which is a new phone system for the Park District that was reviewed and recommended by the Financial Planning and Policy Committee. And then under new business, you have the shoreline protection proposal from Smith Group that was reviewed by all 7 commissioners in a committee of the whole meeting at the start of March. And the changes reflected from that discussion are in the proposal that is in your packet. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Executive Director Wilson?
I will when we get to the Lakefront Committee. I want to drill down a little more about the Lakota.
So that we are there on the agenda then.
So that's me. Lakefront Committee report. Several things. Let's start with the Smith Group. As you know, we had in March a committee of the whole meeting to discuss the Smith Group proposal. We've now received the updated proposal. This revised proposal didn't come through the Lakefront Committee, but it is coming to the whole board, which is appropriate since we last spoke to them as an entire board committee of the whole. So it is in your packet. There's a reduction in the fee. I believe we don't vote in a committee of the whole meeting, but I believe that there was some satisfaction with the scope of work and the feeling that they put us at ease. But this is the place where we can discuss it and vote it, particularly with regard to their fee. There was some discussion. They have revised their fee downward. There is in their fee, and I'm not looking at it right now, it's about 154,000. It's the number in my head. There is included in that 41,000 for what they call, what we call in the industry, contract administration. That means the management of the actual construction is a 41,000. In the committee of the whole meeting we had in March, there was some discussion about whether or not to include that in the fee or pull it out, with the idea that we will know more about what construction would be once we have a design. That is worthy of discussion. And this board may want to debate whether or not to leave it in there or pull it out. That would obviously bring down the fee to about 110,000 or so. So at least for now, there still is a construction administration component that would need to be satisfied. And I would never recommend that we forego that or try to manage a contractor in this kind of work by ourselves. So I would like to start with this. There's more to report with regard to Lakefront, but let's stop here and canvass the board with regard to this proposal. Any questions, comments?
I've got one question. I don't know if it's Steve, maybe you can answer it. If we were to pull out the 41,000 and make it separate, is there any downside to doing that rather than committing to it right now? Or is there a risk that the price goes up if we wait and then do it later? Kind of what's the thinking there?
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. The risk is the price could go up. You're locking in a price right now. And if you look at page 5 under the phase 5 section, it says upon receiving written authorization from WPD, Smith Group will commence construction administration services and responsibilities upon the award of a contractor. So those fees will not be charged unless we give them express consent. So in my opinion, they're already taken out as a de facto fee that we pay that only will be paid if we proceed with the project, go out to bid, hire a contractor, and then give them authorization. So effectively what Commissioner Abbott is talking about is achieved here. It's just still in the document itself as an option, which allows us to lock in the price today.
Yes, you could either lock in the price now, and obviously we don't spend it if we don't move forward, which would be my expectation regardless. Or we take it out and we negotiate the contract administration, particularly if the scope of the project goes down considerably. I don't have a strong opinion on this one. So
I would be in favor of removing it until we organize the next stage of the contract. And here's why. If we lock in now what we feel is a good deal and the project expands or conditions are found that it increases the scope, our construction manager will be operating at a loss. And while we might save a few $1,000s, let's say, the fact is in managed services and in professional services, they will be in a position to either work toward a negative outcome of a negative profit, or they will shortchange in the office and have more junior people working on projects. And so for that reason, I think we should hold off and have it reflect the true value of the project. The other factor is if it goes down, we will have over invested. And so it makes more sense to me to hinge the professional services to the ultimate contract that is selected.
I find no fault in your analysis.
I think one more thing to consider is if we were somehow unhappy with the process and with whom we're working, and we finish it off, but we're unhappy, would we then be locked in to using them if we were to move forward with construction?
I don't think so. But Steve?
I think if it's in there, you do
You're gonna pay it.
somewhat lock in on them.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could use someone else, but we still have to pay them the 41,000. I mean, it's the contract.
I mean, that would be a good reason to carve it out then.
So says the lawyer.
Well,
No, I'm saying that's a very sound comment.
Yeah.
We would be legally bound.
I agree with Julia's comments and everything else that's kind of been said, and I think we should hold off.
It's been a couple of months since we've met with them. I don't know, is it 6 weeks or 8 weeks? But in any case, I thought their presentation and their patience in resolving a number of questions from civilians, most of us are not engineers, Brian withstanding. And so I felt that the rigor in which they answered our questions was satisfying. I really appreciated the time that they took to walk us through the various elements. This is a reputable firm that is willing to work with us, not only because they're very good at what they do, but we've put them through a bit of a ringer to arrive at a solution. So I am comfortable proceeding. I'm not sure if the order of action is to come to a vote this evening, but I felt that their presentation and discussion was complete.
Yeah, the intention is to make a motion tonight. And again, I agree with what you had to say. They came without any defensiveness. They came to explain, all 7 commissioners. I don't expect much of the public to have been, to been listening in on this, but all 7 commissioners had questions and they explained it in considerable detail as to what they're doing. It doesn't mean that we know exactly what they're going to design. I don't think they know either. But they certainly they explained the process to my satisfaction. I just want to make that clear.
Anybody else want to weigh in before we ask Commissioner Abbott to make a motion?
We're not to that point on the agenda yet.
What?
We jumped ahead by about 5 items at this point.
Okay.
It's under new business.
Yes, you're right.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Can we finish this up by, can I take a straw poll about this $41,000 contract administration? So when we get down there, we'll know what we're voting on. Take it out, leave it in. I can take it out. I can be convinced otherwise. Anybody else?
You know,
Julia,
it seemed
are
to make sense at the presentation, it seemed to make sense to defer it. So I'd be, I'd be in favor of removing it
Remove.
for the time being, yeah.
Sure. Anybody else?
I agree.
All right.
Yeah, my preference would be to take it out, but if there was overwhelming support for keeping it in, I wouldn't have any problem with it.
Anybody else?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that we will be making a motion with regard to the Smith Group's proposal, less the 41,000 contract administration. Okay, when we get to that. All right, next item. As Director Wilson said, Lakota is hoping to wrap up at least what I call programming analysis of this is the public input, the commissioner input on Gilson Park by the end of April. This board, that would include these 7 members, have one more lakefront meeting at the beginning of May. I would say effectively that this board of these 7 commissioners will not have another board meeting. So I'm going to throw this out to certainly the committee will meet. Shall the board meet as a committee to hold to take the comments of the Lakota groups? Open-ended question. And I'll be there. I'll be at the meeting, and this will Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Sisler. How about other commissioners?
I'm at every other meeting scheduled until I'm thrown out.
Well, most of you are there on these Zoom calls anyway. If it's a committee of the whole, you can ask questions, weigh in, and you got your last shot at having an impact on the findings of the master plan. So it just allows like we did with the Smith Group, allows everybody to kind of give their comments. How do you feel about it? Really up to the 4 other commissioners.
I'm all for committee of the wholes.
I do a lot of them. Sorry. Maybe that's why I'm not coming back.
So, Brian, so you would want our input on, obviously we wouldn't be voting on anything, but just discussing next steps?
Yeah, you'd be able to ask questions, weigh in, make recommendations as to where you think that either they should change something or not change something. You're correct in that the committee of the whole would not be voting on recommendations. That would go to the full board as to whether or not that portion is done. But Steve, is it conceivable that the Lakota group would attend this meeting in the beginning of May?
Yes, I think it's very conceivable.
So look, I made no secret about the fact that there's some experience in this board. Amy, you and I have been here for 8 years. Gordon, you've been around for a pretty long. Amy, you and I went through the referendum and all those surveys and all that. So there's considerable insights and experience here. And so I'll be there, and I certainly welcome the entire board to be at that committee meeting, if that's what you want to do. I'm hearing.
I always like the opportunity to weigh in, so I'd be in favor of that.
That's 2 of the 4.
Yeah, I'm happy to attend if my input is valuable, you know what I mean? Given that we're not going to be making any decisions, but if you think it will be helpful to have our past perspective brought to light for the new board, then I'm happy to participate and give my opinion if you find that valuable.
I find it valuable. If I've learned anything, or if I think I've learned anything, it's the value of consensus, particularly with regard, I'm sorry, that's my clock. The value of consensus, I'm going to mute.
I have no conflict at this time, so I'm happy to attend. I think it's useful.
All right, then I'm going to count that as a somewhat tepid, but an endorsement of having a committee of the whole meeting for the Lakefront Committee. Does Commissioner Clark or Sisler, does any objection to this being a committee of the whole?
Oh, it's fine.
No, I mean.
All right, then that's what we'll do. There were some discussions at the Lakefront Committee, last Lakefront Committee, about rental fees at Wallace Bowl. It did not particularly resolve itself. Staff has been in the process of negotiating with some, what sounds to me like largish users, graduation kind of users that would use the bowl. And there's been talk about fees, rental fees for that. And then that moved into the conversations as to whether or not we should codify rental fees for Wallace Bowl and how much authority staff might have either in imposing those fees or even in future permits. And that's kind of a second, we'll get to permits next. There was considerable back and forth on the rental fee issue. We didn't come to a conclusion. We have no recommendation to bring to the board. I'm going to see if there's any appetite for talking about it here. I would like to talk about it here. If anybody else, other commissioner, Commissioner Clark or Sisler, if you have anything you want to add at this point, I will let you go first. All right. I came away a little concerned. I view our parks as community assets. And to that end, we don't charge people to go into our parks. Now, I realize that Wallace Bowl is kind of a facility, and we are in the business of facilities, but it's also an asset. And this is my dividing line. I'm just, I don't have any, Steve and I have talked about this. I don't have any way of drawing a hard line. But if it's an event that has some impact, made perhaps in a negative way, noise, crowds, parking, then absolutely. We are asking neighbors to put up with some activity. There's some exuberance that occasionally spills out of Gilson Park. And so if these are large events, then I view that as worthy of discussion of rentals. But I also view Wallace Bowl as kind of a community asset. If it's small groups, and I will tell you that our scouts have used it throughout COVID for a couple of courts of honor. These are 50 people, and we could get outdoors and just have some place where people can sit and spread apart from each other. And nobody, believe me, nobody knew we were there. Or, when I was growing up, I was, believe it or not, I was a drama kid. So, we used to do theater in the park, small little one-act, 20-minute plays every Tuesday night in my hometown, at least, up on the community stage. And these were great. And people would come and sit down and they knew it was going to happen. And they were community builders, and so I don't know where the line lies, but I am concerned with the idea, the concept of looking at Wallace Bowl as a moneymaker, as a revenue opportunity. I think much depends upon what it is we're holding there. I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on this. I can drop it now. This is my advice to the board and to boards, because this is no longer going to be, it's no longer my problem. Anybody else have anything to say about it? Okay.
Well, no, I think, Brian, we talked at the meeting, it was talked about letting the staff use their good judgment and then adjust over time as they learn more. And I think, we can rely on them to do that.
Well, I think ultimately the board is responsible for everything. And I would caution getting too far away from these kinds of decisions. And again, I don't have a line here, except that whatever happens, with the Park District, ultimately it is the board's responsibility. So what was decided, if I can use the word decided, was that staff was going to take a look at it and try to come back with some recommendations that kind of follow what you just said. Let's evaluate what we're asking for here, and maybe not have just a fee schedule that, look, I go rent a boat and there's a fee schedule and nobody's saying, oh, but you could have it for free. So let's evaluate what we're asking for here before we actually make any decisions. Look, I'm just passing on. This is, again, there's not much, I'm leaving. So I want to pass on my comments. This is my nearly my last opportunity to do so. And moving on. Hang on. We approved some meeting minutes from the past. There were some issues of sailing fees in here. And again, this is a concern of mine. And I want to pass this on. As I think most of the board knows, we approve a budget at the end of the year and everything that goes into it. There were some adjustments to sailing fees that were much higher than any we'd ever done in the past. There was considerable discussion on the Lakefront committee about this. We approved the meeting minutes, so here they are. And, if the commissioner doesn't want to review fees, that's their right, I guess. If they don't want to do it, then they don't have to do it, but you're answerable to it. You're answerable to everything that happens. So when a commissioner says they don't want to get into the mindset of micromanaging staff with regard to fees, okay, you're telling the community that, but it is our responsibility. Ultimately, it's all our responsibility. So just wanted to say that. And I don't think I have anything else with regard to the Lakefront Committee.
All right, any questions for Commissioner Abbott? Hearing none, why don't we move on to the Parks and Rec Committee, where all the fun is.
All the fun. Parks and Rec met, I believe, on the 22nd, a week after the last board meeting. But before I go into that, I would just like to, acknowledge to everybody that this will be Gordon, Amy, and Brian's last full board meeting. And I'd like to say you're certainly getting your money's worth. We may set some sort of a record here. So I will try to be as efficient as possible because I know we have a number of things to decide. But just in terms of the summary of the meeting, we did begin the meeting with staff reports because while there's been a lot of talk in Lakefront and Parks and Rec about new amenities and new programming and new ideas, the reality is we're coming into our busy summer season, and there was a lot of talk about camps. The registrations are all already far ahead of schedule. The pool is going to still need to be limited, at least early in the season, but there was some talk about if restrictions are further loosened, that we might be able to do something more traditional later in the season. But we spent a lot of time talking about operations because that's really the heart and soul of a lot of what we do here. Shifting gears, then we did talk about a few other things and sort of wrap up and talk about some topics that have been floating around for a little while. We had talked about garden plots earlier in the year, and we did a survey of the folks both using them and on the waiting list. And earlier we had looked at possibility of expanding that to perhaps different locations. We decided not to do that this year because of some infrastructure requirements, but I'm certainly hoping that we'll be able to look at that in the next board term, because there have been some pretty substantial waiting lists for those programs. We like to get more people involved. We talked a lot about dog parks, the two locations at Howard Park and at Malincrot. The committee did recommend the Howard Park location, but it's my understanding we're not discussing that here tonight, that's going to be referred back to the Parks and Rec Committee. We will be meeting next week to discuss that, and we do have more information about potential costs, which certainly has an impact on my opinion on the subject. But again, more details in Parks and Rec next week. We talked a lot about pickleball and the fact that staff believes that there are some tremendous programming opportunities, and I believe they're coming back to us next week with 1 or 2 or 3 potential locations for a pickleball facility. And I'm certainly hoping that there will be enough information for the committee to make a recommendation on one of those locations that again can be further considered in the next board year. We talked briefly about disc golf, and in the next year, the Parks and Rec board year being next month, the Parks and Rec Committee will look at different potential locations. But we didn't handle that last month, and we won't handle that this month. And then we just recognize that there's a desire to have solar panels at the rec center, and that nothing that's been done in terms of the roofing projects, both the last session, what's being done this year, would restrict us in any way from doing that at some point down the road. And again, hopefully we'll be talking about that at the next meeting. So with that, let's get to the big stuff. We're being asked to consider bathrooms and have a recommended location to community playfields. So with that, there's already been a significant amount of discussion on the subject. I wanted to open the floor up for additional comments from everyone, and then I believe there's a motion and a recommendation.
Mike, is there a motion?
There's not at this point.
Okay.
I think that's right. So
there will be.
Correct.
Mike, do you think it makes sense to just discuss amongst ourselves whether or not we think there should be a bathroom or not? And depending on what that comes to, then we can talk about, well, if so, then what the location should be. And that
I
sort
think
of
we
ease the discussion.
I think we should handle that discussion in 2 separate parts. I agree. Yes. So I think it does make sense to first talk about as a group whether we want a freestanding bathroom in community playfields at this point. That's a great way to start the discussion. I would ask everyone to weigh in on that topic. And it looks like Gordon is gone, but I'm sure he'll be back shortly.
I think I've stated before, I am in favor of a bathroom.
Yes, and I have stated consistently that I think a freestanding bathroom is necessary too.
And I would agree with that.
I think, and I really appreciated tonight's comments. It did help me. I'm being asked to vote, and then what happens to my vote after this point is like, well, I lose control of that. So I need to be very careful what I'm doing with my vote. I'm quite willing to table the discussion for the next board and allow them to investigate more thoroughly the junior high, knowing that we can still build a bathroom. If we get in, I believe that will not pass. I believe that the board wishes to vote on a location, and if so, I'm willing to discuss the location. I thought I heard pretty clearly, I'm going to be going to something to the west. We can get to that point.
And Brian, I would certainly support that as well, but as you said, I don't think there's broad support. But Gordon, are you back? Do you have a comment?
I'm back. Yeah, I
Great.
lost you for a little
There
while.
you are.
Yeah.
I see you now.
Okay. Yeah, obviously I'm in support of a bathroom.
And for me, I would say I strongly support running water bathrooms available at the park when we're doing our programming, but I'm still hoping that we could work out something with District 39 that's feasible. I think there's potential there for us to save hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so before looking at a bathroom location here, I would like to let that play out at least for another month or two, because it seems like we're getting pretty close to the place where we'd have a lot of those questions answered.
Yeah, and I would disagree, because I think even if we do come to an agreement with D39, they will always have the right to kick us out, and then we are in a in the place of starting all over again, which we need to control our bathrooms.
Can't we
Right,
ask,
we'll agree to disagree. I hear you. Absolutely.
can we ask the village to, you know, hold, look, if, you know, 10 years from now, we need to build a bathroom. I mean, money saved for the village.
But I think we need a bathroom even if we do have the junior high bathrooms,
Yep.
because we don't have the junior high bathrooms. And it's been 5 or 6 months, and all we've got is a vocal, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Our staff hasn't even been in to look at these bathrooms yet. We don't know what needs to be done there yet. And I just feel like, you know, why are we extending this process? This is a process that our residents want, something our residents want. And why are we drawing this out?
And my answer, Cecilia, would be, I hear what you're saying about the uncertainty, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that the cost of the junior high bathrooms would be substantially lower than the cost of a new freestanding facility. So that's my reason for it. I just think that there's an opportunity that we can save what I believe would be a substantial amount of money. I think a little bit longer of a delay isn't that big of a deal, but reasonable people can disagree on that. I hear what you're saying.
And potentially we're going to spend it again in you know, sometime in the future, because as Gordon points out, we don't know how long we have these restrooms. We don't know the timing they'll be available. We don't know if they'll be available, so that we're potentially spending it, you know, maybe it's a year from now, and that may be even higher. Prices don't come down, they go up. So we're talking about spending more money in the future, probably spending more money in the future.
Well, it's not a foregone conclusion that, as you say, they would quote unquote boot us out. It's certainly going to, I would think any agreement would have provisions for either side to cancel. So it would always be a possibility, but I just don't think that's a foregone conclusion. But as I said, I hear what you're saying. I think it's, you know, it's a reasonable position. I agree with you on that.
And I agree that we can disagree. I mean, that's why we're commissioners. You know, if I could buy my aunt's used car, or I got to go buy a new car, well, I want to figure out whether or not I got to buy my aunt's, and I could buy that used car first. And so that's where I fall on this. That's all. I say, let's see what we can do. But we can have different. We can disagree. It's okay.
All right, so it's safe to say that we want a bathroom. And the question is, assuming we want a bathroom, what's the proper location?
I think we're ready to move on to that point. Yes,
Well, I mean, somebody's going to make a motion. I'm going to motion a table. We'll vote on that. It'll fail. So let's go ahead and argue about or talk about where it's going.
Why are we going to
Make a motion that I want a bathroom. And then we proceed with
That's a real
getting
motion. Let's do the real motion. But we're going to talk about the location. I'm ready to do that. That's all right.
Okay. Is one of the things I you know, I'm what I'm hearing is this, there's a presumption, and maybe correctly, that if you look at usage of bathrooms or potential usage of bathrooms, because to the point we've never had them, so we don't really know who would use them and from where, but there's an assumption that having a bathroom at I think it was the B location, is close to the tennis courts and the, you know, sort of on the very west side there, is actually in the center of the activity of the uses of the park, which, you know, it's been a few years since my kids played soccer there, but I just remember being a lot of activity being on the east side of the park, certainly on Saturdays. And I'm just curious as to what other people think as to whether or not that is true, because my assumption has been all along is that it's a long way from the east side of the park to the west side of the park, whether people were going to go to the bathrooms at D39 or whether we're going to go to the bathrooms at another location. And you know, quite honestly, if we do go way west with the bathroom, because that's the board's desire to do it, I would say don't even bother, you know, doing a whole lot with D39.
So could you paraphrase?
I raised that question to
I don't know
staff.
kind of what other people think about, usage patterns and whether B or the far west side is really going to work for people who are on the east side.
Yeah, I raised that question with staff as to where what was the most activity at the park, and they, and I don't know, perhaps Emily, maybe you could, if you recall that the question, there was response, maybe you can I don't want to characterize the response, or Christy maybe can answer that question back again.
I don't know if anyone has that hard data in front of them right now. I see Emily poking around on her computer to see if she can find that document. So why don't we give her a second? But I think, when soccer is ongoing, that's, throughout the day, we have well over 1,000 participants in soccer, both in fall and in spring. The comments made by the neighbors are valid, that that location C isn't the closest to serve people using the tennis courts or the playgrounds. And it is definitely, B is definitely a closer location to baseball field. So, the idea of C is really probably very much driven by our soccer program. And that's, I think, been the thought process. I don't want to put words in the mouths of the commissioners who selected C, but I think that's been the driving force in the thought process.
Yeah, and one other point in putting that is like location B is like diagonally across. Again, I'm not really sure where these bathrooms are at the junior high because I've never ever seen them open. But I'm pretty sure, just based on that, I think B is pretty much diagonally right across from where the junior high bathrooms are. So I'm back to saying I don't know. I'm not that certain on that location, just because I think you're getting redundancies now, and that was kind of a concern. But
is there a reason we have not yet been able to access the D39 restrooms to look at them?
We have looked at them.
We've looked at them. What we haven't done is gone in and taken specific measurements and put cost estimates to it, but we have looked at them, and they're old and they need some work.
Thank you.
I guess I'm kind of the thinking that some other commissioners have brought up, that if B is a more desirable location for everybody, I don't know that I would pursue then any junior high option if we're going to have to put a significant cost into refurbishing those and maintaining those, given their proximity to how close they would be to a B location.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to move ahead with the bathroom, then and not concern ourselves terribly with the junior high, then we're going to move ahead with the bathroom, not concern ourselves too much with the junior high. Through this process, we've certainly heard a lot from the community. I have found that the neighborhood around the community playfield, certainly they've been concerned about what's going on in the park, but they haven't take a winner take all attitude towards it. If anything, with regard to the running path, with regard to these bathrooms, they've been willing to pass on their advice as to what they find to be, they think is, let's say, least objectionable or the best. And I want to listen to that. I do look for compromise. I look for consensus. And I don't think that's an immaterial concept, or it factors into my thinking considerably. So I don't have strong opinions as to which location is the better location, but I do have opinions that as a community, we work this out. And so if we're going to have a bathroom, I'm going to have a strong preference towards location.
So I like the C location just because you can incorporate the water pipes there as well. And it's also, I like it being in the middle.
you're right.
And I want to add, I think we have, I believe, a majority in favor of a building, of a structure with restrooms. And I personally think we need to continue to pursue the D39 path. And should by chance we end up with an abundance of an embarrassment of riches of restrooms, lucky us. You know, I think that would be a wonderful outcome. If anyone who has ever waited in line to get to a restroom, whether it's for yourself or for your companions, and you find that there are too many places, all of a sudden it's a short walk to the second one across this, you know, narrow span of parking lot. So again, it sounds as though from Commissioner Murdoch and others that the conversations with D39 are not that far in the future. That gives us a couple of months to pursue while we also continue conversations about the structure. Neither will be done quickly. And I would assume the structure will take much, much longer than, you know, answering a question with respect to an IGA. So understanding that we have a few things that we will be, you know, partnering with the school district on, it seems like this is one that we can work to advance with some speed.
So would somebody like to make a motion?
I move to I move to approve a structure in the park. And I'll let the second motion be with respect to D39, just so we don't have muddied motions. I move to have a restroom in the park.
I would second that. Second that. Do you take a vote?
I will, I'm going to make a motion to table. In order to allow the board more time to consider the D39 option. I'll just say this, I will vote, I would like, if we're going to move forward with a vote, I would like to vote on the location. I'm not going to vote for washrooms in any location. It could be anywhere. I'm not kicking that decision down the road. So I will vote yes for this hypothetically. I vote yes for a bathroom in B. I would vote no for any other, yes, any other location. So I'd like to know what I'm voting on. If it's a generic vote for just bathrooms in the park, I can't vote for that.
So I'll second the motion on tabling, but then Steve, the question is, there's two different motions out there, both have been seconded. What's the order? How do we address that?
The order is you have the primary motion, which is what Commissioner Goebel made. Now you have a subsidiary motion by Commissioner Abbott that has received a second. So at this point, there's no discussion or debating the motion to table. Now that it has a motion and a second, it must be voted on. If it succeeds, then the motion made by Commissioner Goebel is tabled and must be brought back for consideration at the next meeting. Otherwise, it fails in perpetuity. If this the motion to table fails, then we return to the primary motion by Commissioner Goebel.
So do we vote first on the tabling or on the?
First on the tabling, because it's the subsidiary motion.
All right.
All right. Roll call vote. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
No.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
No.
Commissioner Wolf?
No.
Commissioner Goebel?
No.
Commissioner Anderson?
No.
The motion to table fails.
Okay, that's fine. So we are now discussing apparently either like, are we going to put a bathroom in? That was the motion, or are we going to put a bathroom in a particular location?
Oh, so now do we vote on Commissioner Goebel's motion?
Well, we can debate
You
it.
can have discussion and debate about a primary motion.
Well, that's just to have a bathroom in a freestanding bathroom in the park.
That's what the motion is, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm concerned about a motion simply to put a bathroom in the park. Really.
Well, there's no decision yet on where, so that's the next discussion.
That my vote, I'm just telling you, my vote is dependent upon where. I will not vote to just put a bathroom in the park. It is dependent upon the location.
And I would add the motion to advance a a freestanding location may be only symbolic if we do not reach agreement on a location. And I would also add, we probably will in that duration determine the nature of the D39 option.
And I think that's a good, oh, am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, I think that's a good point. And again, as I've said multiple times, I do think it's critical that we have access to running water bathrooms. But I just can't support that at this point until we know where we stand with D39.
So you're, how are you, Commissioner Murdoch, explain that. Are you?
I strongly support running water bathrooms, but I think the best option, as I've said multiple times, is District 39 if we can get an agreement that addresses all of the issues and concerns that the folks have raised. So I plan to vote no on this motion, and I expect to lose that. That's okay.
Well, I expect to lose it too. Is it the opinion of the board, if we can do a straw vote, are we going to vote on a location tonight? Or are we simply voting to put in bathrooms, yes or no, into
Vote the location.
I think the intent was, but I don't think that there's clarity enough on the board to vote for a certain location tonight. But we certainly have clarity, I think, in terms of voting on having a freestanding park board sponsored bathrooms in the park.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. So I'll just say it again. I've said it a couple of times. I won't vote just to put bathrooms in the park somewhere. At this point, my only option is to just, my advice to the next board is to put it in location B, to find consensus and to put it in location B, but it doesn't sound like I'm going to be voting on the location. So yeah, I'll vote no on this. I'm sure it'll pass. The next board will take up the location. That's what it sounds like.
I just to add, I mean, I tend to kind of agree with Amy that if to go with B, that just means though then we just don't consider District 39 anymore, and we'll use the savings from renovating those bathrooms and we'll put it into that location. I mean, part of my issue with location B is cost. I mean, we've got all these people telling us that we're wasting all their money, but then the lowest cost location no one wants. So I guess, but I guess I could, come around to going with location B, but then that means that I agree with you, give up on District 39 then.
And does B interfere with the running path?
I don't think so.
Looks like it might.
Does it look like it does when I look in the map?
It depends on the running path configuration that we decide upon as well.
Yeah. If it's a full mile.
I would suspect there's room. It doesn't look like we're pinched that much. There's a triangle of land there.
Well, so to me, this question of the path again raises the issue of a comprehensive plan, or a plan that satisfies some of the landscaping considerations alongside the path, alongside the bathrooms.
I think that leaving the location option open tonight, even though we were going to vote on it, is a good compromise. But I think we need to make the motion, and we have the motion to make the vote on whether or not we have a freestanding bathroom. And I think it's out there, and we need to vote on it.
Okay.
Is there further discussion, or should we call for a vote?
Let's go.
I'd go for a vote.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Abbott.
I'm voting no on the motion to put a bathroom in the community play fields on the grounds that I don't know where I'm putting it, so no.
Commissioner Schisler.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
No.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay.
And
Are we
so,
going to, are we interested in having further discussions about a location at this point? It's not clear to me where the group is going.
I would be willing to have discussions and even a vote on locations, but you know, sounds like it'd probably be the same 5-2 vote.
You know,
I'm in favor of C based on being able to, in the center of the park and being able to connect it with the water pipes that are protruding from the ground.
I could make a motion to put that in location B. And if somebody seconds it, we have to take it up. Somebody could table it. So, I mean, I don't know how much I want to like push this, but obviously this is my last opportunity. If we're going to put a bathroom in there and I've left it hanging, I don't know where it's going. You know, I'm all for discussing the location here and now.
I think we got to be careful because if you make, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I heard you say when Mike asked the question earlier is if you make a motion and it doesn't pass, meaning if we rejected B, we can't bring that up again in the future.
You can't bring B up.
No, that was, yeah.
I don't think we want to hamstring the future board on locations.
There is a procedure for motion to reconsider. Motions to reconsider. I am a little hazy on the details, but I think you need to do it pretty quickly after a motion has failed. And I do believe the people who make the motion have to be a part of making the motion to reconsider, or at least the people who voted. I forget, there's some details. Commissioner Abbott might remember because we talked about it a lot around the road at Canal Shores and MWRD.
We also did this with regard to the old design, the referendum design at Gilson, and it took a super majority, correct?
Yeah, I think it does. And given that the board's going to change, you know, there is that risk as well.
Yeah, I think if we just sort of confirm where people are thinking right now and make sure that, I'm sort of reading it, that it's pretty split. And I would not feel comfortable voting on a location if it was split like 4-3. So, you know, I would like to sort of kind of get a feel for where everybody is. I sort of have it just based on what I've heard so far.
Well,
But
Gordon, even worse, a 3-3 and 1 abstention. Just throw that out there as a possibility.
I don't want to put us in a situation where it's a close vote and 3 of the members of the board are leaving. You know, that's just not, I don't think that's appropriate.
Let's fight that battle another day.
I can tell you B. I mean, it's no secret. B. I'm looking
Yeah, and I can tell you C, and it's no secret, and Todd will tell you it's C, and it's no secret. And you know, I think Julia said B, so you know, it's I think going to be very split, and I don't think we want to vote on it. I would not recommend voting on it
because the subsequent board and maybe boards after that will need to live with the decisions.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, and they'll also know more from the from what's going on with B39. Right? You know.
Exactly. We will have more information in time, and
we hope we'll have more information. But and if I think we don't have more information, that just is an indication that, you know, a park district, you know, it just says something. If we don't have any more information, that's even more tenuous than we thought.
Yeah, but in any case, whatever deal we have with D39, we do not control those bathrooms.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not going to change, you know, going forward.
Yeah.
I will not put a motion in for location B.
In that case, not hearing from anyone else, why don't we move on to the fitness path? Unless anyone else has anything else to say on this subject.
Not me.
All right, great. Well, then we've had a number of discussions about the fitness path, and so I think we turn our attention to, again, whether we want a fitness path and a proposed location. And I'm happy to make the motion to start the discussion, if that makes sense. So I move to approve the installation of a fitness path in the community playfields in the configuration recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee,
Which was?
which was the half-mile path.
Can we put that drawing up just so we know what there's no question about what we're talking about? There we go. What color are we talking about?
The red.
It's
No.
kind of orange.
It was brown.
No.
Brown. Okay,
Oh.
thank you.
Orange.
It's red. It's
Brown,
red.
it's, if you look at the pricing below it, it's the one marked as brown.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second Mike's motion.
Discussion?
I think I stated before, I feel like if we're gonna do it, let's do it for the 1 mile. I think there's a way to make it work on that south side without the boardwalk and without impacting the fields. I know that it's going to cost a little bit more, but just like we're looking at different considerations for bathroom locations, I think we need to be considerate of a longer term objective and not being short-sighted in our thought process around that, because I do think it will be extremely beneficial to the schools to have the 1 mile path as well as the majority of the people that would use it. So I'm in favor of that.
I would support Commissioner Wolf on that as well. I agree.
And I'll take a contrary view. I think even if we figure out a way to get rid of the boardwalk and bring the costs down, I think it's still going to cost twice as much as a half mile. You're going to be up against all the neighbors on the south side. You are going to be close to the soccer fields. You're going to have to maintain twice as much over the years, and there's a cost to that. And the additional a half a mile course is pretty unique and serves the purpose for which we've got it. And I get why a mile is even cooler. It's not necessary, and people can run 2 half miles and have it equal a mile. I think the extra cost of doing it and the inconvenience it puts on the neighbors on the south side is worth something. And at this point, a path on the north side, the half mile is minimal interference with the neighbors. And so to me, it should be a half mile path.
I will agree with President Anderson. Several things. The law of diminishing returns. Like if I pay $5 for a banana split, I don't want to pay $5 for the next one because I don't want it that much. And I'm certainly not going to pay $10 for the second one. So the cost goes up considerably. The neighbors, again, I think have been willing to, they've been open-minded and compromising. I don't want to push that path down there on the south end where we really I don't know what we're talking about. You're asking me for my vote tonight. I don't know what I'm talking about on the south end. I'm going to leave it at half mile. That's not to say that this path can't be changed. I've been doing the lakefront path through Chicago for 40 plus years and watched that grow and become very, very popular. And that's great. And that evolutionary growth of that path, I think is something that you find out as you go along. So on the one hand, the neighbors have kind of said, can you do the half mile? We aren't spending the kind of money on it. Besides, look, all the training I did, I used to go to Lovelace. It's a half mile. We run around it twice. These days, I walk every day at Mallinckrodt. It's a half mile. I literally do it every day, and it hasn't diminished much, in terms of like. It's not that I won't go out there and walk Mallinckrodt a half mile because it's not a mile. I do it. So. I don't think it's a terrible degradation. We're going to get the runners are going to get a path. So let's be careful that we don't bite off more than we ought to, especially on a plan that we haven't really figured out yet. So I'm going to say half mile.
Cecilia?
I am torn on this one. I really am. I mean, I see a track. people have said, I don't want the board. I don't think the boardwalk is a good idea. But if it can be done without the boardwalk, without hurting the trees, as being right by the neighbors. I mean, I've got an alley right along my backyard, and people run up and down it, and cars go back and forth. I mean, that's just, I was out running and ran by, if you're on a corner house, you run right by their backyard and right along the edge of their backyard. It's not even, don't even have the 25-foot, buffer that we're giving these people, giving the neighbors. So, I just can't, so I am really torn. I think the one thing that I'm most concerned, not even so much the initial cost, it's sort of that question of that upkeep and the ongoing costs is perhaps what is making me, kind of hesitate.
And a future board can always add another half a mile.
And yeah, I guess that is true. But then again, I am concerned that having half mile might, people that you might not get as many people running, and then it becomes, the question, well, we don't have that many people using the half mile, so why should you use a mile? So maybe I don't know. I guess perhaps I'm still leaning. Maybe I am leaning toward the full mile, just because I think that does seem like the letters we're getting do seem to be, the emails are more in favor of the mile, and despite that. So, but I'm sorry, I haven't really made a decision yet, but that's kind of my thinking. So,
well, Cecilia, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think how you decide will determine whether or not I withdraw my motion. So, so I think you need to provide a little bit more clarity.
Oh, I guess, if we can avoid the field and avoid having a boardwalk, I think I would be in favor of a mile. I think that's what I'm going in favor of.
In that case, I will ask to withdraw my motion.
In that case, I'll make a motion that we vote on a full mile.
Well, I think we have to have discussion on that. Is that right, Steve? Clarify.
You guys are really testing my Robert's.
I know. I'm
this
sorry.
evening. I actually don't know procedurally exactly how to withdraw. There was a motion. Who seconded it again?
Gordon.
So I think at a minimum, I would like to hear Gordon agree with the withdrawal. Otherwise, we can vote on the motion and then take another motion on a different topic.
I'd like to talk with Mike about what his count is, and I'm assuming that's why he wants to withdraw the motion.
Sure, I think that Cecilia's casting the deciding vote, and again, going back to the earlier conversation, if we were to vote no on this, and then we come back to a 1 mile path, and I will certainly try to put in there stipulations that we don't in any way impact the current field configuration or the field rotation plan. And someone else will probably say something about you're protecting the trees, as I might as well. We might then end up with a situation where a month or two from now, the staff comes back and says it's not feasible, and then we can't go back and consider this either. So I would want to keep some flexibility. That's why I would ask to withdraw the motion.
Okay, well, let me ask Cecilia, if you look at the half mile path and you look at what the mile would be, they're gonna be, what's the right word? That one would be on top of the other. There's a word for that, and I can't remember what it is. So a future board could, if we decide we're okay with a half mile and a future board decides they want to go for the mile, they can do it. They can just add on to what we've got. So I look at it as, if you do a mile, you can't undo it, and you're out all that money. But if you do a half mile, you can see how it goes. You can right away decide you want to do a mile and add it on later. But I think that you leave your options open with the half mile. You don't leave your options open with the mile. And honestly, we don't have enough information to say we want to do a mile.
Well, I mean, that makes a good argument. And I think my original, going back several months, I think I did vote on the northern loop just, and for that, partly that reason that we could always, it was leaving our options open, then we could always go to a mile on the southern end. So,
Cecilia, that was actually just
Yes.
3 weeks ago, although it feels like a lot longer. I'm sure.
How did
Julia,
how
where
did
were
the
you on this?
committee- What did the committee, what was the vote on the committee on this half-mile path?
It
Was
was,
it a 2 to
well,
1? And who voted for
it
what?
2 to
was-
1,
it
2 to
was
1,
2 to 1.
Commissioners Murdoch and Clark.
Yeah.
Voted for
But
the half
that-
mile.
That was more because we thought, because of the boardwalk and the field, interfering with the field.
If we can do a mile long without interfering with the field, it seems like
I don't know that.
for that.
I don't know that. You're.
Well, I guess
you vote
that
on
I guess
something,
we
I'll
don't
never-
know.
if
We
I vote
don't-
for a Mile, I don't know that it
Don't
doesn't.
know that.
So wait, could we do something similar here similar to what we just did with the bathrooms, in that we agree to do a path and then not tying the future board to have them discuss? I mean, it seems like we're kind of in that same situation of a 3-4 vote again, and 3 of us are leaving. So do we want to tie them to our decisions, and maybe we just say we'd like to proceed with a path and have some further staff recommendations and more on the ground feasibility studies done?
Amy, I'm sorry to be difficult on this one, but we've actually already voted on having a path, I think, back at the December meeting.
Well, I think we recommended,
That the board voted on having a path at the
I
December
think the
meeting?
board voted on both having a bathroom and having a path back in December, is what I recall.
I don't remember that.
Oh, so what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't, yeah, I don't remember that either.
No, look, I'm getting old.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The committee recommended, my
Yeah,
mistake.
the
I'm
committee
sorry.
re-
I apologize.
Recommend it,
So
right,
that
right,
we
right.
would then bring it for a discussion. I apologize, I was mistaken.
Okay, no, it's all good. No, it's all good. It's been a long night, Mike.
It's getting late.
I know, we're all like, wait, Misty, what?
So following what Amy's proposing, if we threw in the wording that Mike is looking for, I believe it, Mike, where you're sort of limiting how it would work, you could say, we want a path that's either a half mile long or it's a mile long, as a mile long doesn't do this, that, and the other. Is that sort of where we're going?
I would be comfortable with that.
I'll make that motion.
Well, we
that-
could deal
Well,
with
let's
the current
understand
motion,
exactly
right.
what we don't want it to do.
No, but to make either a half mile or a mile, as long as it does not interfere with the field configurations.
Interfere with the what?
Field configurations.
We
And the
can't
tree-
do that until Gordon responds to my request to withdraw the first motion.
Right, but I'd like to know sort of all of the things that we're gonna put in if that mile. Are we not gonna say something about getting too close to the trees?
Yeah, trees too, but that we can do so in a way so to not endanger the trees, not use a boardwalk, and not impact the playing fields. And Steve is not.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Commissioner
Yeah.
Clark. I believe the conversation tonight, those are the 3 points that
Yep.
people want considered in a mile path configuration. Do not impact the fields, do not impact the trees, and do not use boardwalk.
And if everybody's okay with that, then I will be happy to withdraw my second to Mike's withdrawal.
Well, I don't know what I'm happy with. I will only vote on for the half mile path. That's I don't know what I'm voting for a 1 mile path, so I'm not sure where we're going. But I just tell you, it's much like the bathrooms. I'd vote for B. I won't vote for anything else.
And so again, just to clarify, I made a motion, it was seconded. I have asked to withdraw my motion, and I believe the seconder has agreed to that. Is that correct? So now the floor is open for a new motion.
So I'll make a motion to adopt or to move forward with a path that's either a mile or a mile and a half.
No.
There's no mile and a half path.
There's a half or a mile.
Either a mile or a half mile. That it's been a long night. That does those three things, that protects the trees, does not have a boardwalk, and
Does not fields.
and does not interrupt the fields.
Does not impact the field configuration or the field rotation.
Correct.
I'd second that.
I didn't hear anything about the neighbors, so I'm. For it.
I was gonna say also, Steve, if you do manage to have a conversation with District 39, the bathrooms, maybe ask for their input on the path as well, and if they have a preference as well.
They have mentioned in prior conversations a preference for a mile-long path.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh, are we?
Is there any further
anybody
discussion?
else want to weigh in before we vote on the motion? Okay. Steve, you want to take a vote on the motion?
Will do. Commissioner Abbott,
No.
Could we restate the motion, everyone?
Yeah, that's a good
Is it
idea.
Todd? It's Commissioner Schisler's
I know how I'm
motion.
gonna vote, but restate it just so it's clear.
Commissioner Schisler's
Well,
motion.
proceed with a path that's either a half mile or a mile. See, I got that part right. That doesn't affect the trees, that does not affect the current field configurations or rotations, and
Does not include a boardwalk.
It does not have a boardwalk. I'm sorry, it is late night.
Thank you. That wasn't a test, I promise.
Oh,
all right, let's, after we've clarified the motion, let's start over with the roll call. Again, Commissioner Abbott,
it fails it's not specific enough, and so I'm voting no. I don't know what it means.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
the motion passes.
All right.
So just to wrap up the Parks and Rec Committee report, I will finish as I started and again state with emphasis that Brian, Amy, and Gordon have gotten their money's worth in this meeting.
Mhm.
And that's my committee report.
You mentioned dog parks. That's going back to committee?
Yeah.
It will be on the committee agenda. There was nothing on the agenda here today. So we'll talk about it in committee next week.
All right. I just want to point out in the meeting minutes here from last month that I favored dog parks and the consideration of dog parks in West Wilmette. There was a lot of lies being sent around social media, and I didn't appreciate it. And it got spread over to Facebook, and commissioners were commenting it, knowing that they were lies. And
I don't think commissioners were commenting on.
there was one commissioner was commenting on it. He's also a moderator on Nextdoor. So there were shadowy people who did it on Facebook who said they were part of the park district. I didn't appreciate any of it. I don't think it's right. And you know what?
Right.
It's part of the record here. It's part of the record that I actually was on record that I was for dog park, and it should be considered in the middle of it. And instead, it's like, oh, he's against it, don't vote for him. And I didn't, you know what? That is not the way to do business. Get off of social media. Put your face on the screen while you're at it.
All right.
And all I see is a forehead. So, do your job and get off of social media.
All right. Moving on. We got the Golf Operations Committee.
Yes, the Golf Operations Committee met on March 22nd. One of the bigger topics that we discussed that evening was the golf cart path project. Unfortunately, due to slow progress from the contractor, the project started, but was not going to have enough of an impact to actually get far enough along to be able to be used this year without seriously impacting the overall play of the course. So the decision was made to defer all the work until the fall, when better course conditions with weather and wetness and things like that could be handled and taken more into consideration, because the course was still wet from snow being, absorbed into the ground, which the big heavy trucks were tearing up the course. So anyway, the decision was made to defer that into the fall. The course was put back to a playable condition, and so they'll wait to do that work, like I said, until fall. We also discussed managers' reports. We have a few new employees over at the golf course, Nick Rushman and Jonathan Colton. So we want to welcome both of them to the Park District golf team. Camp registration has started, so hopefully anybody that's interested in that still has an opportunity to join some golf camps. The driving range has been busy, and membership sales are ahead of last year's 2019 total. So that's a good sign for a continued robust playing at the golf course. The drainage that was put into the course last fall is working well. So that's been a good addition to the course. That will be sodded soon. And any kind of minor damage spots that were taken on during winter weather have been repaired. The greens are looking excellent. So thank you to the staff out there for keeping them looking really great. And new tee markers and cups have been ready to go, and I'm sure probably installed by this point, since the golf course has opened, I believe it was a week and a half ago or so. So, and as far as financials, everything was in line with what was budgeted to this point. So that's pretty much the golf committee. Any questions?
Sounds great. Looking forward to a really spectacular year this year.
I think it'll be busy, and I think the course is going to be fantastic to play. So yes, get out there.
Thanks for being more efficient than I was.
Sorry. No.
Yours was a little harder.
Not as much to vote on, so. All right, thanks so much.
Steve, with regard to golf, I got your email just before this meeting. I would like to talk to Tom just briefly about the work that take place next year. So we'll set that up. And that's all.
Okay, moving on to financial planning and policy.
Thank you. So the Financial Planning and Policy Committee met on Monday, March 16th, and reviewed several matters, including the February income statement, as well as the capital expenditure summary. We also reviewed a phone proposal. The phone system that is currently in place is about 10 years old and has reached end of life. I believe it's actually past end of life in terms of maintenance. And so the staff has reviewed and advanced a proposal to improve the phone system. This will have both handsets and soft phones, which allows for a lot of flexibility for the staff that are not desk-based. And additionally, they've looked at any number of cost savings options. And so after review, the Financial Planning and Policy Committee voted to advance that phone system proposal. And as part of our discussion, I will make a motion to approve that. So I move to approve the purchase of a new phone system from vendor Converged Digital Networks as recommended by the Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
Second.
Thank you.
And Julia, the payback on that is?
1 year and 3 months.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
pretty good investment.
it's that or don't have phones.
Smoke signals were rolled out. So I think this is a sound plan. And I believe we need a roll call vote.
I agree. Commissioner Abbott.
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Phone system is approved.
Thank you. And then I do want to note, because of timing, we happened to meet this evening and can report that because of camp and summer programming registrations, we are well ahead. more than 500,000 ahead of budget. We do expect some favorability as the year goes on. Of course, that will be a matter of timing issues when some of the expenses associated with camp are registered. But at this point in the season, it does appear that there's a lot of excitement, and it shows in the revenue numbers about the community's interest in summer programming.
Correct.
Good.
Good news financially.
Indeed.
Commissioner, President Gordon, I think you expressed some concern coming into this year or coming out of the budget last year that we might have been, the danger of being optimistic with our projections. And I think I don't wish to paraphrase Director Wilson, but perhaps we weren't being optimistic in terms of the revenues this year. And that's what I learned. And I think.
Yep. I think
That's what I figured.
sorry.
Oh,
I think that may end up being the case, and I certainly hope it is. The other side to this, though, is COVID has surprised us in the past, and we've always been more optimistic about what we can do than what we've been ultimately able to do. So, we've got a potential fourth surge. It's a race between vaccines and the disease and the variants, and who knows. I hope we're just a little bit faster than the disease and things open up and can stay open.
I mean,
I would agree with your, it's always good to be cautious. On the other hand, and again, Steve, correct me, but based off of current restrictions, as long as we don't see a shutdown, these should continue to hold. Steve?
Agreed.
Okay. Yeah, well, look, the cases are going up, and I hate saying this, the death rate is still going down. It is a race between the vaccine and the and these new variants, but if this, unless we go back into another shutdown.
well, the CDC is saying Michigan should be doing that, so I don't.
Agreed.
Don't, and they're right next door. I mean, don't.
Let's just leave it at there's a sign of optimism.
Yeah.
So,
Good thing there's a big lake between us and them.
yeah. Oh, well.
I have no other comments for the Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Global. Okay, any unfinished business?
Yeah, well, I got a motion for the Smith Group somewhere.
Well,
That's under new business.
New business. Next,
Okay.
That's next.
All right, sure.
All right, let's move to new business.
As we discussed previously, the Smith Group, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're taking out the contract administration. So I'm going to modify the motion here. We've already had the discussion, unless anybody wanted, no, we all want to go to bed. All right, so I'm going to move to approve the proposal from the Smith Group LLC for engineering design for shoreline protection at Langdon Park and Beach, less the $41,000 contract administration fee, which will be taken out and under consideration in the future.
I will second.
Could you state the total amount of the contract then?
No, I got to look. If somebody can get to it faster than I can, that'd be good. It's about 113.
110 roughly?
About 113 something. Steve? I got to
All right.
scroll through.
So their initial fee was engineering service of $96,600 plus the contract administration, which we won't add, plus bluff restoration design of $17,800, brings us to $114,400.
114.4. Discussion? Kind of had it, I think.
I think we kind of had it.
Good luck with this, guys. Take the roll call.
I'm ready to vote.
Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goble,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The proposal as modified is approved.
In that case, I move to adjourn.
I got
Second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's have our
And
vote.
Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goble,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes, please.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.